Chapter 5:19. Although Xiao Wanru left first, she walked slowly. Xiao Yanru, who walked behind her, caught up with her in a few steps and said that she also felt a little uncomfortable. So the two of them walked slowly and chatted. Before they went far, they suddenly heard a voice behind them, "Mrs., please wait." Xiao Wanru and Xiao Yanru looked at each other and turned their heads in confusion. They had seen the officer of the Ministry of Justice who had been guarding outside when they went out just now, and now he was standing behind a good-looking young man in his 20s. "Are you Mrs. of Duke Xing's mansion?" The young man took 2 steps forward, cupped his hands, and said. Xiao Wanru took a step back. Xiao Yanru was the elder, so at this time, it was natural for her to deal with them. "We are from Duke Xing's mansion. May I know what you mean?" Xiao Yanru looked up and down at the good-looking young man and asked. That's good. I have a letter entrusted by someone and want to give it to you, 5th Miss Xiao." The young man took out a letter from his sleeve and handed it to her with a smile. Xiao Wanru raised her watery eyes in surprise and looked at the person in front of her. She was sure that she didn't know him. "Since you have a letter, why don't you send it directly? Instead of waiting for our miss here." Yujie took 2 steps forward, stood in front of Xiao Wanru and asked. She was taller than Xiao Wanru, so she blocked Xiao Wanru behind her. "Originally, I was going to come to the yard to lodge, but my friend who asked me to deliver the letter said that I must deliver the letter to 5th Miss Xiao, or at least see 5th Miss Xiao receive the letter with my own eyes. In order to live up to my friend's trust, I took the risk to stop 5th Miss Xiao when you two were out." The young man said with a smile and glanced behind Yujie. It seemed that this should be the 5th Miss Xiao. As for the beautiful one in front of him, she was certainly the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion, the first beauty in the capital city. She was really beautiful and stunning. He was also a son of a noble family in the capital city, so he naturally knew how to be polite. When he cupped his hands to salute just now, he didn't look around at all. Now when he wanted to look at the 5th Miss Xiao again, Yujie had already stood in front of him. However, he didn't care whether he could see the 5th Miss Xiao or not. The 1st Miss Xiao was really beautiful. None of the women he had seen could compare with the 1st Miss Xiao. Hearing that the 1st Miss Xiao had not been engaged, he couldn't help but be a little more tempted. "Friend? What friend?" Yujie didn't take the letter and asked. Xiao Wanru poked her head out from behind her and glanced at the young man opposite her. She found that his attention was all on Xiao Yanru. Although he was talking to her, he secretly glanced at Xiao Yanru from time to time with a slightly red face. Miss Wu will understand after seeing it. Although he was displeased that a maid dared to reprimand him like this, it was inconvenient to reprimand her in front of a beautiful woman. He only looked slightly displeased. It said that it's a very important matter related to the safety of the 5th Mississippi. You'll know after you read it carefully. After saying that, he reached out his hand impatiently and motioned for Yujie to take the letter. Compared with the 5th Miss Xiao, who seemed to have an affair with someone else, he was more willing to talk with the 1st Miss Xiao now. He had only heard about her before, but now he saw her in person. The beauty of the 1st Miss Xiao was beyond his imagination. She was indeed as beautiful as jade and charming as she was. "I'm afraid you've made a mistake. I don't know any of your friends, and I won't accept any letter. Please give the letter back to where it came from." Xiao Wanru said lightly. "5th Miss, how can it be possible that you don't know each other? You grew up together and can be considered." The young man was full of Xiao Yanru now, so he was not in the mood to deal with Xiao Wanru, so he said impatiently at once. "How dare you? Who asked you to ruin my reputation?" Xiao Wanru shouted sternly. As soon as she said that, the young man immediately realized that he had made a slip of the tongue. When he was about to apologize, he heard Xiao Wanru say coldly, "If you send a letter, go to my grandma. If my grandma thinks that someone is not trying to frame me, she will give the letter to me." After saying that, she turned around and left. Yujie put her hands on her hips, looked at the young man, and said, "Hey, who is trying to frame my master? If Great Elder Princess finds out, she will definitely teach you a lesson." After saying that, she turned around and left with Xiao Wanru. "Hey, no, I was really entrusted by someone." The young man was anxious and said loudly in an attempt to stop Xiao Wanru. Unexpectedly, Yujie turned around and glared at him fiercely. Is this letter for fifth sister? Xiao Yinru's eyes flickered and she asked curiously. Big sister, if you accept this letter, I will think that you also want to frame me. Xiao Wanru's cold voice suddenly came from the front with a hint of coldness. After saying that, she turned around the path and disappeared with Yujie. Miss, why did the fifth miss do this again? Shuqi felt indignant for Xiao Yinru. Halfway through her words, she found that there were others around, so she hurriedly blurted out her words. Again? The young man's heart skipped a beat and he looked at Xiao Yinru with a little pity in his eyes. He didn't expect that the first Miss Xiao would be bullied by her younger sister, which really made him feel sorry for her. Thinking of the fifth Miss Xiao's words just now, he felt very angry. He heard that the fifth Miss Xiao had not been raised in the capital city since she was a child, but had been living outside. As expected, the fifth Miss Xiao did not know etiquette and did not appreciate people's kindness. She said that she was trying to frame her younger sister. Don't talk nonsense. Xiao Yinru reprimanded her softly. Shuqi looked aggrieved, but she did not dare to say anything more. She looked very well behaved, which made the young man increasingly like her. Is this letter really for fifth sister? Xiao Yinru turned to the young man and asked hesitantly. The young man pinched the envelope with his hand. At this moment he did not know whether to send it or not, so he felt very embarrassed. It's for the fifth Mississippi. An old friend of the fifth Miss asked me to send it to her. He was afraid that the letter would be lost, so he specially asked me to hand it to the fifth Miss in person. I didn't expect that the fifth Miss would misunderstand. First Miss, what do you think? I don't dare to accept this letter. If I accept it, my fifth sister will blame me. Xiao Yinru shook her head and said helplessly. She could have accepted it, but Xiao Wanru's last few words made her unable to intervene in this matter. Unexpectedly, Xiao Wanru was so vigilant. But this letter… The young man was also in a dilemma. At that time, he had patted his chest and agreed. It was very convenient for the officials of the Ministry of Justice to meet the fifth Miss of Duke Xing's mansion, who was inconvenient to go out in the Yuhui nunnery. Unexpectedly, the fifth Miss avoided him like a snake or a scorpion. Could it be that she really had an affair with Qi Tianyu as he thought? I can't do anything about this letter. Your Excellency, do as you see fit. Xiao Yinru bowed sideways and said softly. She had an outstanding appearance and behaved delicately and elegantly, which made the young man fascinated. He only felt that the first Miss Xiao in front of him was indeed beautiful, but her heart was even more beautiful. Seeing that she was about to leave, he subconsciously took 2 steps forward and said, First Miss Xiao, Your Excellency, what else can I do for you? Xiao Yinru stopped, turned around and asked with a smile. The young man's face turned red at once and he couldn't even say a word. He didn't know why he called her. Hearing this question, he looked embarrassed. May I ask who sent this letter? Xiao Yinru looked at his embarrassed face and smiled softly, as if she had just asked a question casually to help him out of the predicament. It's Qi Tianyu, the former third prince. The young man felt that the first Miss Xiao in front of him was more intelligent and replied hurriedly. Third prince. Xiao Yinru seemed to be a little interested. Yes, third prince. I heard that he grew up with the fifth Miss Xiao. He knew that the fifth Miss Xiao was trapped in the Yuhui nunnery, so he asked me to send a letter to you. The young man waved the letter in his hand and said helplessly. In fact, he really did it out of kindness. Because he had been reprimanded just now, he didn't dare to say that they were childhood sweethearts, but only implicitly said that they grew up together. Fifth sister did grow up in Jiangzhou. Sorry to trouble you, Your Excellency. Xiao Yinru, who was dignified and decent, bowed deeply to the young man again, and then turned to leave slowly. This time, the young man didn't dare to stop her. He just looked at Xiao Yinru's receding figure with a little affection. The first Miss Xiao was really perfect. Whoever could marry her would have a perfect life. Not long after Xiao Wanru returned to the silence room, Xiao Yinru also came back and followed her into the silence room. She asked Shuqi to go back to her room to clean up, saying that it was a little untidy since she hadn't lived here for a long time. Shuqi would clean her room when she was free. Fifth sister, I asked just now. It was said that the letter was sent by Qi Tianyu, Qi Tanhua. Is he Sister Rongji's elder brother? Xiao Yanru took the tea served by Yu Jie, took a sip, and asked curiously. Xiao Wanru looked up at her and saw her with an exaggerated smile. She raised the corner of her mouth and said sarcastically, "When we were in Jiangzhou, he and the first Miss Qin were engaged. Later, the first Miss Qin was going to marry into Duke Yong's mansion, so she and her mother, Madame D, set me up. After leaving Jiangzhou, the first young master of the Qi family put all the blame on me and said that he would fight with me to the death. Big sister, do you think it's normal for the person who used to fight with me to the death to send me a letter that seems to care about me? Fight with me to the death?" Xiao Yanru was stunned. She really didn't expect this answer, because Qi Tianyu didn't mention it. "Yes, fight with me to the death." Xiao Wanru looked at Xiao Yanru with a slight smile and said lazily, as if she were talking about someone else's business. Xiao Yanru's face changed slightly, and she said indignantly, "Who does he think he is? How dare he say that? Maybe he thinks that my identity has changed, or I'm useful to him again. Of course, it's also possible that someone wants to use him to ruin my reputation. Big sister, you know many people in the capital city. Who do you think is most likely to set me up? Since I recognized my family, I have been living on the mountain and seldom go out. I don't even know many people." Xiao Wanru asked with a faint smile. "It's really hard to say. Since the man surnamed Qi is not a good person, we might as well take someone to get this letter back and destroy it, lest it will affect your reputation," Xiao Yanru said angrily on behalf of Xiao Wanru. "Go directly to get it back?" Xiao Wanru raised her eyebrows. "No, it will attract too much attention." Xiao Yanru shook her head. Chapter 520. It's too obvious to ask for it directly. Fifth sister, how about? Xiao Yanru looked a little hesitant, as if she really didn't know what to do at the moment. Xiao Wanru looked at her stealthily with her clear eyes, waiting for her meaning. "Why don't you ask him to meet you secretly and make it clear? In this way, he won't send such an ambiguous letter and make others misunderstand. I think the official of the Ministry of Justice seems to be very suspicious of the relationship between you and the first young master of Qi's mansion." Xiao Yanru said with a serious face, "Of course, you can't go alone. I have to accompany you. In this way, even if someone sees it, they won't say that you have a secret relationship." Her words were extremely righteous. She had even thought about how to explain for Xiao Wanru if they were discovered. It could be said that she had thought about everything. If Xiao Wanru was really a girl who knew nothing, she would probably be cheated this time. If she went to meet Qi Tianyu with Xiao Yanru, Qi Tianyu and Xiao Yanru would refute at the same time and say that she used Xiao Yanru as a shield to deliberately lure her out and then left her aside to meet with a man because she was afraid of being discovered having a secret meeting with Qi Tianyu. In this way, her reputation would be ruined. Saying the same thing verbally and saying it the other way around were two completely different things. "Big sister, I have nothing to say to him. Let's fight to the death. Anyway, I don't care." Xiao Wanru thought for a while and refused with a smile. She slightly curled the corner of her mouth and said, "Even if I won the third place, so what? I have my grandma and I'm not afraid of him. Moreover, girls in the inner courtyard and boys in the outer courtyard rarely meet each other." The disdain in his words was obvious. "This is not good. After all, we grew up together. He may have been deceived by what happened at that time. Now the whole capital city knows what happened to the first Miss Qin in Jiangzhou. If the first young master of the Qi family is still rational, he will definitely not blame you. I think he specially sent this letter to show his concern for you. It can be regarded as a humble apology for what happened at that time." Xiao Yanru wiped the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief and said with concern, "But no matter what he means, he is an outsider and has nothing to do with fifth sister now. We have to avoid arousing suspicion. Don't send this kind of letter or other things in the future. This is not Jiangzhou. If there is some gossip, it is always bad for girls. Can you say clearly or early? You have to make it clear." "Shall we ask him to go up the mountain to make it clear?" Xiao Wanru was silent for a long time this time, as if she couldn't make a decision at the moment. "Of course, Let him go up the mountain and make it clear. What happened in Jiangzhou is over, and the truth has been revealed to the world. Speaking of which, young Master Qi and you are both victims. After making it clear, go your separate ways and don't contact each other again. Xiao Yanru's eyes became increasingly sincere and her expression became gentle. Men may not know how important a girl's reputation is, but how can fifth sister and I know it? Fifth sister's current identity makes it more inappropriate for her to write to other men. Originally, I did want to receive the letter for you, but later I thought it was wrong. If I received the letter, it might really cause a misunderstanding. Xiao Yanru kept saying that she was considerate of Xiao Wanru and wholeheartedly wanted to be a good elder sister who was afraid that her younger sister would go the wrong way. Any younger sister would be moved by her words. Xiao Wanru's words in front of the door were also harsh. Xiao Yanru, as her elder sister, not only didn't care about it, but also helped her to make plans. Xiao Yanru was indeed worthy of the rumor that she was the miss with the best reputation in the capital city. Then I'll do as you say, big sister. Xiao Wanru didn't hesitate too much this time. Since Xiao Yanru had said such sincere words, it would be a little distant for her to refuse. Fifth sister, do you want to make an appointment yourself, or should I send someone to talk to the official of the Ministry of Justice? Xiao Yanru asked. Big sister, I'll have to trouble you. Xiao Wanru thought for a while and said, It's no trouble at all. We are sisters. Then I'll go back and ask Shuqi to go out and make it clear to that official and ask him to bring the first young master of the Qi family up the mountain tonight, okay? Xiao Yanru said with a smile, as if she didn't know that others might suspect her if she made an appointment. She had never doubted her younger sister's image of a good elder sister and even didn't care that her reputation might be damaged. If Xiao Wanru hadn't died in Xiao Yanru's slander in the last life, she might really have been deceived by her hypocritical appearance. Thank you, big sister. Xiao Wanru showed a kind of trust at this time. Of course, Xiao Wanru didn't give this kind of trust to Xiao Yanru unconditionally. Xiao Yanru fought for it and felt that it was more and more credible. Xiao Yanru was just a little girl raised on the mountain. Her mind was similar to that of an 11-year-old girl when she went up the mountain. Xiao Yanru had 1,000 reasons to believe that without Ru and Great Elder Princess's guidance, Xiao Wanru would be nothing. It was inconvenient for Xiao Wanru to tell Ru and Great Elder Princess about this kind of thing, which happened to be convenient for her to do things. Xiao Yanru went back to arrange her servant girl to go out and make an appointment. Xiao Wanru stood up, walked to the desk in front of the window, lifted the white veil on the curtain, and saw an unfinished painting. She picked up the brush on the inkstone, looked out of the window, and made a few strokes. Miss, why did the first miss agree to make an appointment? If someone finds out, how will she explain it? Yujie came in with a new cup of tea, put it on the corner of the desk, stepped aside, and couldn't help asking. Who saw her servant girl make an appointment? Xiao Wanru said casually and made another stroke. There are so many people in the Yuhui nunnery now, so they must have seen her servant girl making an appointment. Yujie answered. There were not many nuns in the Yuhui nunnery, so they might not have seen this kind of thing. But now, in addition to the nuns in the Yuhui nunnery, there were also people from the Ministry of Justice. The people from the Ministry of Justice were still digging 3 feet into the ground to find the murderer, so how could they not keep an eye on every suspicious or not suspicious person? So what if they saw it? They can also say that they sent it to me. If they have Qi Tianyu's testimony, it will be even more convincing. Xiao Wanru put down the brush, stood a few steps away, and looked at the painting she had painted. As long as Qi Tianyu said that Xiao Wanru had deliberately asked Xiao Yanru's servant girl to make an appointment for her and then gave the servant girl a large banknote, he could put the blame on her. How did the first young master of the Qi family and the first Miss Xiao know each other? Yujie was shocked. Why not? Qi Rongji is Xiao Yanru's younger sister now. How could they not know each other? Xiao Wanru walked back to the desk and added a few strokes to the empty places she had seen just now, making the whole painting more substantial. One person's testimony might not be enough, but what about 2 people? Moreover, many people must have seen her meeting with Qi Tianyu, so the facts spoke louder than words. Miss, why don't you let me do it? I can also ask the official from the Ministry of Justice to prove that you made an appointment with the first young master of the Qi family just to make it clear that you don't send letters here in the future. Yu Jie was a little anxious. She didn't want Xiao Wanru to have anything to do with Qi Tianyu. It's useless, Xiao Wanru said with a sweet smile. Seeing Xiao Yanru's infatuated look, the young official from the Ministry of Justice just now knew that she was unreliable. This won't work and that won't work. What should we do? No, miss, you can't go to see the first young master of the Qi family. Yu Jie was so anxious that her forehead began to sweat. This kind of thing would ruin any miss's reputation, not to mention that Xiao Wanru was still on the mountain now. She said that she was observing mourning for her parents for 3 years. If she failed at the last step, not only would she lose her reputation, but she would also be scolded. What was more, the situation on the mountain was like this now. No one knew whether other things would be involved. Xiao Wanru tilted her head, looked at Yu Jie's nervous face, put down the writing brush and smiled. Miss, you can still smile. This matter can't be looked down upon. Yu Jie said anxiously. Don't worry. I'll be fine. I'll ask my grandma to go there tonight. Xiao Wanru said meaningfully with a trace of gloominess in her watery eyes. The Qi's mansion had always been secretive about what happened in Jiangzhou. It seemed that they were helping someone hide something. Although Qin Yuru's matter had basically been recognized by everyone, no one in the Qi's mansion had made a clear statement. Even Qi Tianyu, the victim, always took care of the Qin's mansion's face, which made people feel good about him. Xiao Wanru had long wanted to tear him apart because of his clingy look. In the last life, she was a victim. This time, she wanted to make use of this matter to officially fall out with Qi Tianyu. No matter what Qin Huaiyong was planning, she didn't want him to collude with the Qi's mansion again. She couldn't allow her grandma and Shui Ruolin to be implicated by him. If he only did it for Qin Yuru, now that Qin Yuru's reputation had been ruined, what else couldn't Qi Tianyu say? Or even if he didn't say it, he could spread the word through other channels. She would not forget how Qi Tianyu hurried up the mountain to express his love after he won the 3rd place. When she was in the Qin's mansion, Qin Huaiyong intended to unite with the Qi's mansion by marriage. No matter how outstanding Qi Tianyu was, how could the two mansions sit down and get close to each other after such a thing happened? Moreover, there were other outstanding children in the capital city, right? Thinking of the last life, even after what happened in Jiangzhou, Qi Tianyu and Qin Yuru still had no grudge. As for Magistrate Qi and Qin Huaiyong, they were still a pair of good brothers. They often wrote to each other and sent gifts from Jiangzhou from time to time. The Qin's mansion also prepared gifts for them. No matter what Qin Huaiyong was planning, Xiao Wanru was sure that he was definitely not Chu Liuchen's man. She put the painting on the desk aside, pulled out a piece of paper, picked up the writing brush, thought for a while, and wrote it down. When she finished writing, she hung the paper to dry a little but didn't put it away. Yu Jie, where is the letter that Madame of Duke Xing gave me? Miss, wait a minute. I'll find it right away. Seeing her Mrs. calm behavior, Yu Jie was a little moved. Hearing her Mrs. question, she immediately took out a letter from a drawer of the desk and handed it over. She pulled out the letter, looked through it, saw the flower paper inside, and put it on the table. Go and pick a few orchid leaves according to the pattern on it. Xiao Wanru instructed and reached out to point at the orchid leaves on it. Everyone had their own preferences. The flower paper bought outside was actually not in line with these unmarried Mrs. preferences. They would always make their own style cleverly. These leaves were cleverly bent into the shape of the word, "Are you?" Together with a few pieces of elegant grass painted on it, they formed the word, "Are you?" Chapter 521. Your Highness, where are you going? Seeing Chu Luchen going out, Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly put down the tray in his hand and asked. Chu Luchen, who was wearing a black mink cashmere cloak, was not only black on the outside, but also a black robe on the inside. Chu Luchen turned around and walked out. Your Highness, you can't go out today. Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly chased after him and said, Your Highness, don't forget that the Empress Dowager will send someone to see you later and ask the Imperial physician to come and check your pulse. Just tell them that I'm asleep. Chu Luchen said casually. Xiao Xuanzi's face turned bitter. If someone else said this, it might be reasonable, but it was the prince who said it. It was really wrong. After all, his master had been lying in bed all the time. He slept during the day and at night. In fact, there was no distinction between day and night. Even if he slept at night, he might not be able to fall asleep, so how could he say that he was asleep? Master, the Empress Dowager said that the Imperial physician's medical skills are very good. Have you forgotten? She also said that the Emperor also recognized the Imperial physician's medical skills and specially asked him to come to see you. Xiao Xuanzi tried hard to persuade him again. This matter could not be delayed. If it was only in the Empress Dowager's place, his master could be a little willful, but there was still the Emperor. According to the Empress Dowager that day, the Emperor also paid attention to this matter. If his master went out, what should he do? It doesn't matter. Just tell them that I'm asleep and no one is allowed to disturb me. Ask him to come tomorrow. Chu Luqian waved his wide sleeves and continued to walk out. But, Xiao Xuanzi stammered and couldn't say a word. But what? Is it possible that I'm not allowed to sleep? Chu Luqian squinted his eyes, glanced at Xiao Xuanzi maliciously and strode away. Your Highness, Your Highness. Xiao Xuanzi called him a few more times and helplessly watched His Highness leave. Then he stamped his feet heavily and turned back to find Dr. Qi in a hurry to think of a solution. If he couldn't satisfy the Imperial physician sent by the Empress Dowager, he had to find a more reasonable explanation. As the night fell, the lights were lit. Xiao Yanru, who had had dinner with Xiao Wanru just now, looked at the night outside, gently wiped the water on the corner of her mouth with a handkerchief, and said with a smile, "Fifth sister, it's almost time. Let's go." Big sister? I think we shouldn't go. Xiao Wanru hesitated with a little uneasiness in her watery eyes. She picked up the handkerchief in her hand and put it down again. Obviously, she was really uneasy. There was a trace of sarcasm in Xiao Yanru's slightly lowered eyes, but when she raised her head again, she was calm and decent. She looked at Xiao Wanru like a willful child and said, "Fifth sister, he has already come here. Now we have to go to the mountain with the help of the official of the Ministry of Justice. If you say you don't go now, if the first young master of the Qi family is angry and insists on rushing in, it will be more likely to cause trouble." Knowing that Xiao Wanru might regret it, she immediately did it when Xiao Wanru asked her to deliver the message. She was afraid that Xiao Wanru would regret it. In the current situation, Xiao Wanru couldn't regret it even if she wanted to. Hearing the faint threat in Xiao Yanru's words, Xiao Wanru looked very embarrassed. She wrapped the handkerchief in her hand around her fingertips several times, and then put it down and lowered her head. She didn't say whether she would go or not. It was obvious that she had been undecided. Well, fifth sister, go and have a look. If you find something wrong, it won't be too late to come back. Xiao Yanru stood up, reached out to pull her arm and pulled her up. Let's have a look first. Let's not move. Xiao Wanru stood up, still frowning. Okay, let's have a look first. If we find anything unusual, we can come back. If others don't find us, they won't know that we have been out. Xiao Yanru reassured Xiao Wanru again. Well, let's go and have a look. Xiao Wanru nodded helplessly. Since things had come to this point, it seemed unreasonable not to go. The two of them quietly went to the front yard of the Yuhui nunnery with a servant girl. The officials of the Ministry of Justice were now guarding in front of the Yuhui nunnery. There were many simple sheds in that area. Some large Buddhist halls were in the front part, and only the incense rooms and meditation rooms were in the back part of the Yuhui nunnery. Xiao Wanru lived closer to the back mountain, so they had to pass by many places on the way. The appointed place was a relatively small Buddhist hall. Originally, the Yuhui nunnery was closed at night. However, because the officials of the Ministry of Justice were guarding outside, the Yuhui nunnery was not closed at night. Several chief officials would find a Buddhist hall to handle affairs at night. After all, the lights in the Buddhist hall were much better than the simple ones outside. Moreover, some Buddhist halls were lit all night long. Both of them put on a hooded cloak and wrapped themselves in it. In the dark, Xiao Yanru led the way in front, and Xiao Wanru followed behind. They quietly avoided several officials of the Ministry of Justice they met on the way and walked to the outside of the Yuhui nunnery. The Buddhist hall they chose was not big, just at the corner near the front. Because it was too small, the Buddhist lamps were not lit. They could only vaguely see the outline of the hall with the help of the lights on the road. Fifth sister, go in now. I'll wait outside. If there is anything unusual, call me and I'll come in right away. Xiao Yinru turned to Xiao Wanru and said in a low voice. She pointed at the half-closed Buddhist hall and said, "The first young master of the Qi family should have arrived. If there is no one in the Buddhist hall at night, it will be closed." Big sister, I'd better not go. Xiao Wanru hesitated again. At this time, why are you still hesitating? Go ahead and make it clear to him. You will be the miss of Duke Xing's mansion in the future. Even if he is the Tanhua, he can't get close to you. However, you should go in for a short time. Just say it in a few words. Don't waste too much time with him. Xiao Yinru said with concern and reminded her a few more words. She looked as sincere as she could be, as if she was thinking about Xiao Wanru sincerely. Well, all right. Xiao Wanru seemed to be forced to go in. She moved her feet slightly and walked forward, and Qing hurriedly followed her. Why did she bring a little maid with her? Xiao Yinru asked Shuqi in a low voice when she saw that Xiao Wanru did not bring the two principal maids, Yu Jie and Chu Lu. I don't know. Just now, I only paid attention to the fifth miss and didn't notice who was behind her. Shuqi also shook her head. The first miss only asked her to pay attention to not letting the fifth miss go back halfway, but she really didn't notice that it was Qing, the maid behind Xiao Wanru. Maybe the fifth miss doesn't want others to know about it, even if it's her principal maid who is close to her. After all, Qing is a little maid who knows nothing. The fifth miss may feel more at ease with her. Xiao Yinru raised the corner of her mouth with a sneer. She was really stupid. She didn't ask a loyal personal maid to follow her, but asked a rude maid who knew nothing to follow her. However, the more stupid Xiao Wanru was, the more advantageous it would be for her. She had thought that after the incident, Xiao Wanru's maid would definitely defend Xiao Wanru. Now, it was much easier to deal with a little maid who had seen a lot of things than a principal maid who had seen a lot of things. Xiao Wanru was very happy about this. Have the people over there been recruited? First miss, rest assured. I have hinted to the official that the fifth miss might have a secret rendezvous with the first young master of the Qi family here. I believe he will come over in a while. Shuqi said with a smile. The first miss sent a letter at that time. After all, some words couldn't be delivered directly, so it was best to send a letter. Moreover, this letter was written in the tone of the 5th Mississippi. As for the official of the Ministry of Justice who delivered the message, she had hinted a lot and almost told the 5th Miss the time and place of the secret rendezvous. In addition, she hinted that the 5th Miss had been very arrogant in the past. She scolded the 1st Miss and didn't treat the 1st Miss as her biological sister at all. She had even asked the 1st Miss to send a letter to another man for a secret rendezvous before. This time, the official of the Ministry of Justice, whether for the sake of the first young master of the Qi family or the 1st Miss, would definitely take someone to ruin the 5th Miss plan and make the 5th Miss lose face. Xiao Yinru nodded with satisfaction and looked at the gate of the hall with burning eyes. At this moment, Xiao Wanru had entered the hall. It suddenly became quiet at the gate of the hall. Suddenly, a low voice of a woman came from the hall. Although it was not loud, Xiao Yinru heard it clearly. She couldn't help but be stunned. First Miss, what's the sound? Shuqi, who also heard it, trembled and asked anxiously. In the dark, Xiao Yinru shook her head silently and stared at the slightly closed gate of the hall with a frown. Logically speaking, there shouldn't be such a sound at this time. Could it be that there was an accident? The gate of the hall was suddenly pushed aside, and a black figure, who seemed to be a man, appeared in front of the gate. He waved in Xiao Yinru's direction and then turned to enter the hall. First Mrs. Shuqi lowered her voice and said in a panic. Things were beyond their imagination. Could it be that there was really an accident? Did the first young master of the Qi family come to the gate to invite the 1st Miss to discuss it? At this time, only the first young master of the Qi family knew that the 1st Miss was here. Let's go and have a look. After thinking for a while, Xiao Yinru made up her mind. At this critical moment, she couldn't fail at the last moment. The two of them arrived at the gate of the hall one after another. Looking at the dark hall, Xiao Yinru stopped cautiously and looked back at Shuqi. Is young Master Qi in? Shuqi asked in a low voice. Come in. A voice came from inside. It was a little far away and low, sounding a little gloomy and anxious. Perhaps it was a little too low, so Xiao Yinru couldn't hear Qi Tianyu's voice clearly. However, she could be sure that it was not the voice of a woman. It should not be the voice of Xiao Wanru or Qing O, the maid. I'll go in and have a look. You stay at the gate of the hall. If someone comes, report to me quickly. Xiao Yinru warned cautiously. Someone would come later, so she had to ask Shuqi to keep an eye on it. Chapter 522. Shuqi waited outside anxiously and rubbed her hands from time to time with anxiety. Suddenly, she saw a light coming from afar, so she hurriedly reached out to knock on the door of the hall and said in a low voice, Miss, someone is coming. Come out quickly. There was no response from inside. Shuqi was so scared that her face changed dramatically. She knocked on her hands again and said anxiously, Miss, hurry up. She looked up and found that someone had come over. It seemed that someone had seen her and reached out to point in her direction. Shuqi had no time to care about anything else and hurriedly flashed into the hall. It was so dark in the hall that she couldn't see her own fingers. After taking a few steps, Shuqi almost tripped and fell to the ground. She hurriedly reached out to hold the pillar beside her and sweated profusely in the dark. Miss, are you there? First young master of the Qi family, She didn't dare to raise her voice and could only call over and over again. However, it was quiet in the hall as if there was no sound at all. Suddenly, there came a low moan. Shuqi listened carefully and found that it was a man's voice instead of the first Mrs. Then there came another moan. It was a woman's voice. As soon as the familiar voice came, Shuqi was immediately overjoyed. She hurriedly groped in that direction and said anxiously, Miss, let's go quickly. Someone is coming. What's going on? In the dark, Qi Tianyu touched his dull head, sat up with the support of the altar table and asked, First young master of the Qi family? Shuqi froze for a moment and rushed in the direction of the voice. It's me. Who hit me? Qi Tianyu stood up straight and still felt a headache. He touched his head with one hand and said, after closing his eyes hard, he felt that the hall in front of him was not so swaying anymore. Shuqi. In the dark, Xiao Yinru's voice also came, sounding a little weak. Shuqi rushed in that direction. Suddenly, she tripped over something and fell to the ground. Xiao Yinru screamed in pain. Miss, is it you? Let's go quickly. Someone is coming. Shuqi touched the ground and said anxiously, First Miss Xiao? Qi Tianyu also recognized Xiao Yinru's voice at this time. He composed himself and said with his face changing immediately, It's me. Why did I faint? Someone knocked me out just now. At this time, Xiao Yinru had realized that something was wrong. She stood up with the help of Shuqi's hand. Is there a side door here? Qi Tianyu arrived earlier than her, so he must have seen the surrounding environment. Yes, follow me. Qi Tianyu reacted quickly and said in a hurry, feeling flustered. He came here to meet Xiao Wanru in private, but he didn't see Xiao Wanru but Xiao Yinru. Moreover, both he and Xiao Yinru were knocked unconscious, so he immediately knew that something was wrong. It was not the time to talk about it in detail. He turned around and walked to the side door, while calling Xiao Yinru and her maid to come over. When the three of them met up and hurriedly walked towards the side door, the sound of footsteps came from outside the main hall. Under their horrified gazes, the door of the main hall was kicked open, and a strong light shone in from the outside. Xiao Yinru hurriedly reached out to block the strong light outside. A large group of people rushed in. Tianyu, I've been looking for you everywhere for fear that something might have happened to you. Are you meeting a beauty in private? The young official of the Ministry of Justice came in with a laugh, but he immediately seemed to be shocked by the scene in front of him. Looking at the scene in front of him in astonishment, his smile froze on his face. He looked at Qi Tianyu and then at Xiao Yanru, who reached out to cover her eyes and said, Is this the 5th Miss Xiao? Shuqi hurriedly reached out to hold Xiao Yanru's head in her arms, lowered her head tightly, and didn't dare to move in a panic. Qiu, I'm fine. You can go back. Qi Tianyu touched his head and said with displeasure, waved his hand and said, I'm fine, Qiu. You can go back. I really don't know. If I knew that you and the 5th Miss Xiao were here, I wouldn't have brought people here to look for you. Qiu said with a smile, full of embarrassment for bumping into his good friend's plan. After saying that, he waved his hand and said to the people behind him, Go. It's not a big deal. You found her. Keep your mouth shut when you go out in the future. Don't ruin the Mrs.'s reputation. The people who came answered sparsely, and many of them smiled to watch a good show. Many people knew that the 2 misses of Duke Xing's mansion were on the mountain. One was the 1st Miss Xiao, the first beauty in the capital city, and the other was naturally the 5th Miss Xiao in front of them. It was said that she was a filial daughter. Judging from her behavior of secretly meeting a man, it was not a good thing. With a good reputation, she was actually very lascivious. They had thought that the Lord's friend was missing. Many things had happened in the Yuhui nunnery recently, so they came to help look for him. They didn't expect to see such a scene. How could it be possible? They had never seen such a thing. The first miss meeting a man in private under the moonlight was such an erotic thing, but they actually saw it. A large group of people left in a hurry. In the dark, Xiao Yanru secretly breathed a sigh of relief and her expression eased. Fortunately, she was wrapped tightly today. The light was too bright and blocked her eyes. Otherwise, she would have been unable to avoid that moment just now. Although she didn't see Xiao Wanru now, it still fell on Xiao Wanru. In the dark, Qi Tianyu also breathed a heavy sigh of relief and said in a low voice, First Miss, go quickly. There is a back door in the side hall next to here. You can leave directly. Shuqi, let's go. Xiao Yanru nodded. Since she had put the blame on Xiao Wanru, she couldn't stay and let others see her face. The people who walked out of the hall suddenly stopped and looked at the girl in front of them under the light in astonishment. Her face was half covered by a veil, and only a pair of beautiful eyes were exposed. They were a pair of beautiful eyes, which were slightly raised. Such eyes should look charming, but there was a bit of innocence on her face. At first glance, they could tell that she was a young Mississippi. Although they couldn't see the color of her face, they could tell that she was an extremely beautiful girl. A little servant girl stood beside her with a lantern. Her cloak and hood fell down. Although her face was covered by the light, she still looked amazing. Someone stepped back carefully and whispered to the person beside him, She can't be a fox, can she? Under the shadow of the light, her dress fluttered in the wind, which looked extremely extraordinary. How could it be possible? This is a nunnery, that person said in a trembling voice. He looked up at the plaque of the Buddha Hall above his head, suggesting that even if there were demons and ghosts, there should be none in this place. This was the place where all the gods and Buddhas lived. How dare little demons come here? Excuse me, are you from the Ministry of Justice? Xiao Wanru asked softly. You are? Qiu took 2 steps forward and cupped his hands to Xiao Wanru. He didn't recognize her. I'm the 5th Miss of Duke Xing's mansion. My big sister is missing, so I came all the way here just now. I wonder if you have seen my big sister? Xiao Wanru said calmly and curtsied to them in a dignified manner. The 5th Miss of Duke Xing's mansion? 5th Miss Xiao? She is inside, someone exclaimed, and someone turned around and pointed to the dark place in the hall behind them. They were so shocked that they couldn't even finish their words. If the person in front of them was the 5th Miss Xiao, then who was the one inside? Someone said that our first miss came here with her maid Shuqi. Did you see her? Our miss was afraid that something might happen to our first miss, so she came here with me, but we didn't see her all the way. Qing shook the lantern a little, as if she wanted to see the person in front of her clearly, but she also let them see her face clearly. She was an 11 or 12-year-old maid, and she looked a little naive. I'll go and have a look. A staff of the Ministry of Justice suddenly turned around and ran into the hall. Several others looked at Xiao Wanru and then at the maid, and then turned around and followed him. Miss Qing, said with a blank look. Is there any trace of my big sister? Xiao Wanru turned to Qiu Yu and asked. Qiu Yu was also at a loss. He pointed inside and then pointed at himself. At this moment, he didn't know whether it was the first Miss Xiao inside. His heart skipped a beat with inexplicable mixed feelings. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer. Qing, let's go and have a look. Seeing that he couldn't answer, Xiao Wanru also stepped into the hall. Qing, answered and followed her. Where is she? Where did she go? Someone in the hall was asking and someone was running. Let's go to the side door to have a look. When Xiao Wanru walked in slowly, she only saw Qi Tianyu standing alone beside the altar table. Xiao Yenru and Shu Qi had long disappeared. Many people went to look for them, and some people surrounded Qi Tianyu and looked around. Even the curtain under the altar table was lifted, but they still couldn't find them. Qi Tianyu lowered his head slightly, and his face couldn't be seen clearly. He put one hand on the altar table, closed his eyes slightly, and then slowly opened them. He looked at Xiao Wanru sharply, took a deep breath, and said, Xiao Wanru, what do you mean? First young master of the Qi family, what do you mean? According to these officials, the first young master of the Qi family was with a girl just now, and the girl was not me. But the first young master of the Qi family misunderstood me and ruined my reputation. Why did you come here? We should have settled the scores when we were in Jiangzhou, right? Xiao Wanru said coldly. She sneered in her heart. Just now, Qi Tianyu had hinted to push the blame to her. Now that she showed up, he intended to push the blame to her directly. She was really not afraid of falling out with him, lest Qi Tianyu pretended to be her childhood sweetheart and had a deep affection for her. Qi Tianyu frowned secretly when she mentioned what had happened in Jiangzhou as soon as she came up. He was most unwilling to mention what had happened in Jiangzhou. No matter how it came about, he had been cuckolded by Qin Yuru at that time. Any man would feel ashamed when talking about this kind of thing. Qi Tianyu, who had always been intelligent, knew that it was not appropriate to mention what had happened in Jiangzhou at this time, so he simply ignored Xiao Wanru's words and continued to talk about his own topic with a sad look. Wanru, you asked me to come here, and I also came here after receiving your letter. As for the miss just now, I don't know her. She just happened to appear here and left just now. Chapter 523. It's not the first Miss Xiao but the fifth Miss Xiao who met you in private? There's even a letter. That's great. Let me have a look. Qiu Yu, who followed them, suddenly felt that he had come back to life. He reached out to grab the letter, unfolded it and read it. He burst out laughing and said, It's really a letter to meet the first young master of the Qi family. Look, even the time and place are clearly stated. After saying that, Qiu Yu glanced at Xiao Wanru contemptuously. He had thought that Xiao Wanru was a pure girl, but he didn't expect that she was a lascivious one. He was afraid that Xiao Wanru would snatch the letter away and others would not read it, so he showed it to the people beside him. The others passed it one by one and looked at Xiao Wanru with disdain. The girl's beautiful handwriting showed that she was meeting someone in private. She was indeed a girl who didn't abide by the rules for girls. Can I have a look at this letter? After most of them had finished reading it, Xiao Wanru said unhurriedly. Someone passed the letter over, and Xiao Wanru took it. Wanru, it's you who asked me out, and now it's also you who made it like this. As for the first Miss Xiao you mentioned, I didn't see her at all. Could it be that you want to set me up to frame the first Miss Xiao? If it's true, I was blind to take you as a good girl and come to see you, but it turns out that it's just a trap. Qi Tianyu said angrily. He pounded on the table with his hand and his face turned red with anger. A trap. After reading it, Xiao Wanru knocked on the letter with her fingers and looked sideways at Qi Tianyu. Qi Tianyu couldn't help feeling flustered when he saw Xiao Wanru's clear watery eyes. He hadn't seen Xiao Wanru for more than 2 years. 2 years ago, Xiao Wanru was just a child. Now she had grown up. Her watery eyes made his heart beat faster. Because 2 years ago, although her appearance was exquisite, she was still a child. Now, who knew how beautiful and outstanding she was? Qi Tianyu had never doubted Xiao Wanru's appearance. Glancing at her charming and pure eyes, he felt a little flustered inexplicably. First young master of the Qi family, I don't remember that we're so close. When we were in Jiangzhou, because of first Miss Qin, we've made it clear that we'll fight to the death. Does the current situation mean that we'll fight to the death? It's been almost 3 years since I said this. I didn't expect first young Master Qi to have never taken it to heart. Xiao Wanru handed the letter to Qiuyu and said decisively, I didn't write this letter. For a man to want to fight to the death with a woman, how much hatred must there be between them? Under such great hatred, was it really possible for two people to have an affair? The people of the Ministry of Justice had always been sensitive. They immediately thought of many possibilities. It was a trap. Yes, it was definitely a trap to frame the fifth Miss Xiao in front of them. Many people were immediately persuaded. At first glance, they could tell that the fifth Miss Xiao in front of them was a pure and dignified girl. How could she do such a thing? Moreover, the fifth Miss Xiao had always had a good reputation. Qiuyu subconsciously took the letter, looked at the letter on the letter, and then looked at Xiao Wanru. He felt that he was also confused. This letter is not mine. You can tell by looking at the letter paper. I can't make such a good flower paper. I cultivate in seclusion on the mountain, so I don't know how to make it. I heard that many misses, who are clever and kind, will make the mark of their name on the flower paper. I wonder if it is marked with my name or big sister Xiao Yenru's name. Xiao Wanru said unhurriedly. Looking at her unhurried look, Qi Tianyu had an intuition that something was wrong. He reached into his bosom and touched another letter, which was sent by Xiao Yenru. She said that she had made an appointment with him on behalf of Xiao Wanru and asked him to make it clear with Xiao Wanru. He had known about it for a long time and wanted to leave after receiving the letter. However, he received another letter, which was sent by Xiao Wanru's personal maid named Yu Jie. The time and address of the private meeting were written in this letter. If it was taken as evidence, of course, it would be more convincing if it was written by Xiao Wanru. After thinking for a while, Qi Tianyu took out Xiao Wanru's letter and hid Xiao Yenru's letter. Although he felt that it was not good at this time, it was inconvenient for him to take out the other letter. Several people from the Ministry of Justice came up to Qiuyu and carefully identified it. Some of them were children of aristocratic families, so they were very proficient in this kind of flower paper. After a few glances, someone immediately said, "It's a character of Ru. Look at the flower leaves and the grass patterns." As he spoke, he reached out to gesture, and many people immediately nodded. They were all from the Ministry of Justice and had sharp eyes. As soon as he said that, everyone immediately understood that this piece of paper was not the fifth Miss Xiao's, but the first Miss Xiao's. It was obviously the first Miss Xiao who made an appointment with Qi Tianyu, not the fifth Miss Xiao. First young master of the Qi family, we have said that we will fight to the death, so we don't need to contact each other in the future. However, don't blame this letter on me in the future. I don't care who you have an affair with and who you want to meet here. I just hope that you won't mention my name again. After saying that, Xiao Wanru decisively turned around and left. Qi Tianyu wanted to stop her, but he opened his mouth and didn't know what to say. At the first glance, he clearly knew that Xiao Wanru in front of him was no longer the Qin Wanru in the past. Qin followed Xiao Wanru for a few steps. She seemed to be really angry. She turned her head, put one hand on her waist and said angrily, "First young master of the Qi family, why are you so sure that this letter is from my master? Our miss has been on the mountain for more than 2 years, and she has no news with you at all. Why do you blame our miss for a private meeting after receiving a letter from you? Did you always use our miss as a shield for you and first Miss Qin when you were in Jiangzhou? Please stay away from our miss in the future." Xiao Wanru stopped and called in a low voice. "Miss, I'm coming." Qing answered, turned around and left with the lantern in her hand. The people present looked at each other and didn't know what to say for a moment. Everyone turned their eyes to Qi Tianyu. What happened in Jiangzhou had been recorded in the Ministry of Justice because the coachman who wanted to kidnap Xiao Wanru had been taken away. Everyone present knew this matter. At that time, The first miss of the Qin's mansion and Qi Tianyu did push all the blame onto Xiao Wanru, who was still the second Mississippi. Could it be that what happened today was a repeat of what happened at that time? Some people who knew the inside story of Jiangzhou believed it. If there was one, there would be a second. In fact, it was not strange. The fifth Miss Xiao had always been a scapegoat for others, but she was framed again. Tianyu, did you really meet the first Miss Xiao in private? Qiu Yu's hands were trembling, and he only felt angry. It was obvious that he liked the first Miss Xiao, but how could his brother meet her in private at night? Moreover, the letter was passed through his hands. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that he had been used as a stepping stone. He couldn't get rid of this anger. As soon as he saw Qiu Yu's expression, Qi Tianyu knew that it was not good. He immediately restrained his thoughts and tried to comfort Qiu Yu. Qi Tianyu, no wonder you repeatedly told me to meet the miss of the Xiao's mansion when I came to the mountain to investigate the case this time. No wonder you were so ecstatic when I gave you the letter from the first Miss Xiao. It turns out that you and the first Miss Xiao, actually. Qiu Yu felt so distressed that he couldn't even say a word. He pointed at Qi Tianyu with trembling fingers and couldn't continue. The letter in his hand was thrown to Qi Tianyu's face. Qiu Yu was so angry that his face turned red. He stamped his feet hard and turned to leave. At the scene, the crowd looked at each other and didn't know how to deal with it at the moment. Hey, look, it's really the first Miss Xiao. Look, there's a character Ru on this handkerchief. I just picked it up at the back door of the side hall. A person from the Ministry of Justice came in with a handkerchief in his hand and a smile. The pattern on the corner of the exquisite handkerchief, which looked like a flower, was exactly the same as the one made just now. Needless to say, it was indeed made by the same person. The people from the Ministry of Justice looked at each other. Was the first Miss Xiao, who had a good reputation and would soon be selected as the princess consort of the prince, really so unbearable? With such a good reputation, she shouldn't have done such a thing, right? Could it be done by the woman just now? But was the woman the first Miss Xiao? It was really not easy to judge without seeing her face. Xiao Yanru ran out from the back door in a hurry. Along the way, she didn't have time to look around and hurriedly returned to her courtyard. Fearing that she would meet someone on the way, she took a longer detour. It was not until she reached the gate of the courtyard that she breathed a sigh of relief. What happened just now was too thrilling. If someone saw her face, her reputation would really be ruined. Fortunately, she didn't let anyone see her face in the end. But what on earth happened just now? She clearly heard a man's voice outside the hall before, but why did Qi Tianyu pass out early after entering the hall? Who was the extra man? As she thought about it, she was about to push the gate of the courtyard and enter. Suddenly, she heard a man's heavy voice coming from the courtyard. She was stunned. Why did a man come over at this time? Come on, come on. The man's voice was heavy and a little familiar. Hearing it, Xiao Yanru's breath quickened. It was obviously the man's voice she had heard outside the hall before. If it weren't for this voice, she wouldn't have stepped into the hall given her character. What are you doing? Xiao Yanru's three maids' voices were distinctive. Xiao Yanru, who had been familiar with their voices these days, immediately recognized that it was Chu Li's voice. This man was so familiar with Chu Li. Needless to say, he was even more familiar with Xiao Wanru. She gently pushed the gate of the courtyard and gritted her teeth. She could be sure that she had suffered a loss today. Xiao Wanru must have played a part in it, but she didn't know the other man. This time, she must catch this man. As long as she caught this man, she would like to see how Xiao Wanru would defend herself. Chapter 524. The door of the courtyard was wide open, and there were only Chu Lu and Qing in the courtyard. Shuqi looked around and didn't find any man. She stepped forward and said angrily, "Tell me, who was the man just now?" "A man?" Chu Lu and Qing looked at each other and didn't seem to understand Shuqi's words for a moment. Looking at Xiao Yanru's gloomy face, they both blinked to show that they didn't understand. "How dare you two deny it? First Miss and I clearly heard Chu Lu talking to a man just now." Shuqi reached out to point at Chu Lu, and her fingertips almost touched Chu Li's nose, as if she had come to catch them in the act. Chu Lu didn't understand at first, and then suddenly laughed. Qing also laughed so hard that she couldn't straighten up. Chu Lu reached out to slap Shuqi's hand away and said with a smile, "Do you want to ask me, which man did I talk to just now? Is that what you mean? Go ahead." Shuqi didn't dare to look at her master's livid face at all and said angrily, "Shuqi, do you mean me? I was talking to Sister Chu Lu just now." Qing smiled and changed her voice. It was a man's voice. Hearing this voice, Xiao Yanru's face turned red and then green, and she almost couldn't control her anger. She looked up at the corridor and found Xiao Wanru standing there with a smile. Seeing her look over, Xiao Wanru deliberately tilted her head and asked, "Big sister, is it fun in the main hall? Is it fun in the main hall?" Xiao Yanru almost tore the handkerchief in her hand. Now she understood everything. It turned out that she had fallen into Xiao Wanru's trap. She figured everything out. No wonder Xiao Wanru only took Qing with her instead of other personal maids. On one hand, Qing could imitate a man's voice very well. On the other hand, Qing was an inferior maid. Although she was small, she might be stronger than the two personal maids, so it was not a problem for her to knock her unconscious. As for Qi Tianyu, he was probably knocked unconscious because he didn't guard against this little maid. She strode to the corridor, reached out to point at Xiao Wanru and said angrily, "Xiao Wanru, I treat you sincerely. Why do you treat me like this?" "Treat me sincerely?" Xiao Wanru tilted her head and blinked her watery eyes as if she really didn't understand. "If you treat me sincerely, will you encourage me to meet someone else in private? Big sister has read so many rules for unmarried girls, but I didn't know that there was such a rule that encouraged one's sisters to meet men in private. Why don't eldest sister report this to old madam?" Seeing her fearless look, Xiao Yanru was so angry that her lungs were about to explode, but she couldn't do anything to her. If she told old madam about this, old madam would definitely know that she was up to no good. Even though she knew that old madam would protect her, Xiao Yanru didn't want her gentle image to change in old madam's mind. She had thought that Xiao Wanru was only 11 years old before. Even if she had stayed on the mountain for a few years, her temperament could not change much. She had underestimated Xiao Wanru and was really careless. Fifth younger sister, not only was my good intentions treated as ill intent, but I was also harmed by you to such a state. I'm blind. Xiao Yanru snorted coldly, turned around and left angrily. It seemed that she was really wronged and angry because she was harmed by Xiao Wanru. At this time, she couldn't really fall out with Xiao Wanru. Seeing Xiao Yanru leave, Xiao Wanru slowly walked into the door of the silence room. Yu Jie stepped forward to help her take off her cloak and then serve tea. Xiao Wanru sat down in front of the mat. Her watery eyes flickered, and she began to ponder. "Miss, will the first miss have a bad reputation tomorrow?" Yu Jie folded her cloak and said, "No." Xiao Wanru shook her head and said with certainty, "Her reputation is so good that people don't think she would do such a thing. Moreover, with her identity, she doesn't seem to be a person who will like Qi Tianyu." Xiao Yanru's target had always been those princes. Qi Tianyu couldn't attract her attention. This was a fact. Not only she thought so, but also others thought so. As the first Miss Xiao, who was both talented and beautiful and had the background of Duke Xing's mansion, she could be said to be the favored daughter of heaven. Such a favored daughter could only be matched by the noble child's. Qi Tianyu's foundation was too shallow. That's not necessarily true. There are some superior favored daughters who like ordinary men. Yu Jie curled her lips and said, "When I was in Jiangzhou, I heard some stories about talented men and beautiful women. Although the first young master of the Qi family is a jerk, he is still a talented man. The first miss is the same. Regardless of character, she is a beautiful woman. In this regard, they are very compatible." Seeing Yu Jie take it for granted, Xiao Wanru burst into laughter and said, "Yu Jie, you used to cultivate on the mountain, didn't you? You even have stories to read. Does Mingqiu Nun know about it?" Yu Jie was tongue-tied. After a long while, she said with a bitter face and grievance, Miss, you can't tell Mingqiu Nun about it. I can only tell you about it, but I dare not tell Mingqiu Nun." "Then tell me where you got the stories to read?" Xiao Wanru was interested. Jingxin Monastery definitely didn't have their own stories. I occasionally went down the mountain to buy medicine for Mingqiu Nun, and, by the way, Yu Jie blinked her eyes. Seeing her master's curious and bright eyes, she knew that she had to say it, so she could only say it sleepily. So you embezzled Mingqiu Nun's money to buy medicine and secretly bought the stories to read. Xiao Wanru laughed. It was really funny that a nun, who was a cultivator, was reading this kind of storybook. Miss, I'm telling you something serious. Why can't the first miss gossip about you tomorrow? Why can't the first miss and the first young master of the Qi family gossip? Yu Jie stamped her feet angrily and said loudly. Xiao Wanru reached out a white and tender finger and gently pressed it on her lips, signaling her to speak softly. Miss, tell me. Why can't they? Yu Jie immediately lowered her voice and said, Qi Tianyu doesn't want to ruin my reputation. He just wants to control me. He should have been prepared for it. Moreover, it has something to do with Xiao Yenru, which is even more unbelievable. Xiao Wanru smiled slightly, and there was a clear light in her eyes. In fact, not only Qi Tianyu, but also Xiao Yenru must have planned it. Otherwise, Qi Tianyu wouldn't have been so obedient and cooperative with Xiao Yenru. Unexpectedly, Qi Tianyu and Xiao Yenru had hooked up in just over 2 years. In this way, Qi Rongji really played a big role. In the last life, Qi Tianyu and Xiao Yenru should have colluded with each other. She had seen Xiao Yenru talking with Qi Tianyu, but they met through Qin Yuru in the last life. In this life, Qin Yuru didn't work, so she used Qi Rongji. It could be seen that the two of them were fated to meet. Whether it was in her previous life or this life, she had long since died. Entangled with each other. Since it's useless, I might as well not do anything. Yu Jie said in frustration. It was a pity that she couldn't hurt the first Mississippi. It was equivalent to catching the first miss in bed, but she couldn't. The collapse of a 1,000-mile dike can be caused by an anthole. Take it slow. Xiao Wanru said pointedly, blinking her beautiful big eyes. Now Xiao Yenru had an excellent reputation. Even if there was something going on, everyone thought it was impossible. However, if such things happened frequently, how long could Xiao Yenru hold on? She was still young and had plenty of time to waste, but Xiao Yenru was not young. In any case, Xiao Yenru's target couldn't be the emperor in the palace. Yu Jie was really curious why Xiao Yenru failed to marry anyone she wanted in the last life and finally became the emperor's. Hearing Xiao Wanru's words, Yu Jie was happy again. She immediately nodded and said, Miss, it's getting late. Let me serve you to have a rest. It was indeed getting late. Xiao Wanru stood up and looked out of the window. It was dark outside the window. It was indeed getting late. It's getting cold at night. Let me close the window for you. Yu Jie came over and reached out to close the window. Suddenly, she saw a black shadow flash by the window. She hurriedly took a few steps back and looked at Prince Qin in front of her in astonishment. Yu Jie was familiar with the pale and sickly Prince Qin. But now Prince Qin, who used to be too sick to get out of bed in Yu Jie's heart, actually flew up from under the window. How could she not be shocked? If she remembered correctly, there should be a cliff outside the window. Go down. Chu Luchen waved his hand. His thick black clothes made his extremely elegant and delicate eyebrows and eyes appear in the light. Xiao Wanru suddenly found that he not only looked like a handsome young man coming out of ink and wash, but also had a strange sense of evil beauty in the night. Under his pale and handsome face, the ink-colored mink fur made his eyebrows and eyes look as white and light as jade. But even so, he was still extremely handsome and elegant. Xiao Yenru gestured to Yu Jie to let her go down. Xiao Wanru sat down in front of the mat again, poured a cup of tea for him, and said, Your Highness, please come and have tea. She looked natural, as if she didn't think there was anything wrong with Chu Luchen coming here at this time. Yu Jie looked at Xiao Wanru's calm face and then looked at Prince Chen's gentle face. Feeling that there would be nothing wrong, she carefully left and closed the door for them. Several henchmen knew that their miss was going to enter Prince Chen's mansion. Yu Jie didn't feel that it was wrong for Prince Chen to appear here unpredictably. Instead, she felt that it was very good. At least it could show that Prince Chen was not terminally ill. That was good, that was good. As long as Prince Jin was healthy, it didn't matter. There seemed to be some noise in her ears, but after listening carefully, it seemed to be gone. Yujia shook her head and wondered if she had an auditory hallucination recently. She always felt that there were some faint noises in her ears, but every time she listened carefully, she felt that it was the sound of the mountain wind sweeping over the stones and branches. It was strange. Could it be that she hadn't had a good rest recently? She would ask Mingqiu Nun tomorrow and ask her to prescribe some medicine for her. Otherwise, she couldn't even sleep well. Chapter 525. Is he angry? The smile on his face could hardly be hidden. Your Highness, did you get involved in the previous matter? Xiao Wanru asked with concern. Although Xiao Wanru didn't know the truth about the previous matter, it was obvious that there were too many people involved. She was afraid that it was not a scheme that one person could set up. In the past few days, the officials of the Ministry of Justice had sealed the entire Yuhui nunnery. There were so many people coming and going every day. It seemed that the entire Yuhui nunnery had been turned upside down. However, Xiao Wanru knew that the people on the other side of the high wall had actually been checked once. The door was tightly sealed. After that, all the people on the other side of the high wall had been checked. It had nothing to do with the S of the former emperor behind the high wall. It was tight on the outside but loose on the inside. No matter how she looked at it, it seemed to be mysterious. I'm sick. Chu Luchen looked sideways at her and smiled with a faint light flickering in his eyes. Then he put down the teacup in his hand. Xiao Wanru immediately leaned over and refilled his cup of tea for him. The officials of the Ministry of Justice are still on the mountain now. Will it be dangerous for you to go up the mountain at this time? After all, he had been pretending to be sick now. If he was found, it would be extremely bad. If I didn't come, would I miss today's good show? Chu Luchen said leisurely. He picked up the teacup and took another sip. He squinted at Xiao Wanru, which made her panic. Your Highness, the first miss of Xiao's mansion wanted to plot against me. I just beat her at her own game. Xiao Wanru said cautiously with all kinds of speculations in her heart. Could it be that Xiao Yinru had a very good relationship with Prince Qin in private because she was so capable? Beat her at her own game? Chu Luchen raised his eyebrows. The smile at the bottom of his eyes faded away, making people feel that his eyes were increasingly gloomy and frightening. Xiao Wanru nodded hard to show her sincerity. Yes, I beat her at her own game. If you want to beat him at his own game, what about the letter you sent to Qi Tianyu before? Chu Luchen said slowly. Others didn't know about the letter, but Xiao Wanru didn't think that Chu Luchen knew about it. She hurriedly explained frankly, Xiao Yinru helped me send a letter asking him to meet me. Although I don't know what's written in it, if Qi Tianyu wants to take it as evidence, it must be the letter written by me. If he takes it out, it will involve Xiao Yinru. Chu Luchen stared at her beautiful eyes carefully. When she mentioned Qi Tianyu, there was no ripple in her watery eyes, as if he was an irrelevant person. Chu Luchen was slightly satisfied. Stay away from him in the future. Don't write to just anyone. Chu Luchen snorted coldly and said with a displeased look. Then he reached out to hold Xiao Wanru's hand and said, Let's go. I'll take you to explore the way. Xiao Wanru stood up after being pulled by him. Hearing his words, she hurriedly held his hand and said, Your Highness, you can't walk around at this time. If someone finds you, it will be a big deal. Now there might be people from the Ministry of Justice even at night. Of course, they couldn't walk around at this time. Who knew if there were people from the Ministry of Justice hiding in the dark? No one will find us. Chu Luchen smiled triumphantly. He looked at the slender hand that held him tightly. She didn't use much strength, but it inexplicably made him feel good. The smile slowly spread from his face to the bottom of his eyes. Xiao Wanru didn't know how she pleased Chu Luchen. Although he also smiled gently, she could tell that he was really happy at this time. This person could be angry one moment and happy the next. It was really hard to fathom. However, thinking about it, it was normal. If this person could be figured out, he wouldn't have sat on the throne of the final winner in the last life. He even asked his uncle to pass the throne to his nephew instead of his son. It could be seen that his means must be powerful. Your Highness, there are many people from the Ministry of Justice here. When Xiao Yanru and I went out before, we found people from the Ministry of Justice guarding at the door. Although it is at night, we can't guarantee that they are not here. Xiao Wanru's hand slipped to his sleeve. It was really difficult to hold his wrist, and it was much easier to hold his sleeve. It seemed that Chu Luchen was going to take her out again. It was so late at night, and she didn't want to go out at all. What are you afraid of? I won't go in from the front door. Chu Luchen said casually. He stretched out his hand and pulled hard. Xiao Wanru couldn't stand still and staggered to fall on him. He reached out his other hand and held Xiao Wanru in his arms with great familiarity. Let's go down from the back window. There was a cliff outside the window. Xiao Wanru had seen it more than once. Hearing his words, she was so scared that her face turned pale. She didn't have time to struggle and hurriedly persuaded, Your Highness, there is a cliff outside the window. You know that if something goes wrong in such a place, we will be smashed to pieces. No. Chu Luchen walked to the window with Xiao Wanru in his arms, looked out of the window and said lightly. Xiao Wanru was so scared that her whole body tightened. This time, she held Chu Luchen tightly not with one hand but with both hands. She raised her beautiful eyes with some delicate sadness and clearly showed her weakness. Your Highness, we really can't take risks. Even if it's in case, we can't take risks. Seeing her pitiful look, Chu Luchen suddenly laughed. He put his other hand around her, hugged her, and said softly in her ear, I won't change my decision. It's useless for you to pretend to be pitiful. Xiao Wanru's sad expression froze on her face. After being stunned, she subconsciously reached out to pinch him hard. After being exposed, she became angry out of shame and said, Your Highness, it's really dangerous down there. You don't want to live, but I still want to live. As soon as she finished speaking, Xiao Wanru immediately came to her senses. Looking at the smile on Chu Liuchen's handsome face, she blushed at once. These were her true thoughts. How could she say it so easily? Don't worry. I don't want to die so early. I haven't married and had children yet. He suddenly jumped up and fell straight to the window. Chu Liuchen's gentle voice was in her ears, but at this moment, Xiao Wanru was shocked. She gritted her teeth, hugged Chu Luchen tightly, closed her eyes, softened her body, and let him do whatever he wanted. The current situation was beyond her control, but he didn't look like the kind of person who was courting death. She paused and stepped on something very quickly. Wasn't it a cliff? Xiao Wanru didn't open her eyes, and she didn't dare to move her feet. She always felt that her heart was not quite at ease. Chu Luchen lowered his head and saw that her whole body was soft and she was holding him tightly. He raised the corners of his mouth and smiled more leisurely. He reached out to pat her face gently and said softly, You can open your eyes. It's okay. Even if you really fall down, it's okay. There's water below. Xiao Wanru slowly opened her eyes. She first opened one eye, looked around, and found that there was a protruding rock under her feet. Then she breathed a sigh of relief and opened the other eye with relief. Seeing her deceiving herself, the lingering fear on her delicate little face, and her soft body snuggling up to him, Chu Luchen was in a very good mood. He took Xiao Wanru, whose feet were soft, and took a step forward, leaving the edge of the rock. After taking a few steps, Xiao Wanru felt that she was really standing on the ground instead of in the air. Although her feet were uneven, she was still on the ground. She put down her hand and tightly grabbed a corner of Chu Liuchen's robe. She looked around, but she couldn't see clearly in the darkness. She only felt that there seemed to be a hole in front of her. A hole? There was a hole under the silence room? Xiao Wanru's face turned pale in shock. Is this dug out or natural? She was not stupid. She didn't expect it at first, but now she thought about it carefully and found it extremely terrifying. Let's go in and have a look. Chu Luchen held her slender waist and supported her to walk in. In the darkness, Xiao Wanru followed Chu Liuchen's footsteps and moved with difficulty. Fortunately, she was half held in Chu Liuchen's arms. When she accidentally tripped, Chu Luchen would pick her up. After taking a few steps, they were blocked in front of them. Was there no way out? It was just a small natural cave. Xiao Wanru breathed a sigh of relief. No one wanted to see a passage suddenly appear under the place where they lived. But the next moment, Chu Luchen took her to the side to avoid it. A man in black appeared out of nowhere and bowed to Chu Luchen respectfully. Chu Luchen nodded. The man in black stepped forward and pushed the stone blocking the door. The big stone was slowly pushed away, and then a dim light slowly overflowed. It was very faint. If they hadn't been in front of them, they might not have been able to see it. When the stone was pushed halfway, the man in black stepped aside. Chu Luchen held Xiao Wanru in his arms and turned a corner. Then everything in front of them suddenly changed. Not far away, there was an oil lamp hanging. Under the oil lamp, there was a fallen figure. A little farther away, there was another person and another oil lamp. They couldn't see them after turning a corner. There were very few passages and one person could squeeze in. It seemed that the passage was expanding now. The oil lamp was dim and faintly illuminated the place. The rest of the passage was still dark. They couldn't see the farther place after turning a corner. This was a passage that was still being opened. Xiao Wanru didn't dare to move and stiffened in Chu Liuchen's arms. Under her silence room, there was not a passage that had been dug, but a passage that was being dug. She didn't know where it extended from, or maybe she didn't know where it was going to extend to. Are they dead? Xiao Wanru bit her lip and managed to suppress the scream in her throat. She lowered her voice and asked, "They are not dead. They just passed out temporarily." Chu Luchen said casually. He shook his robe and then retreated behind the stone with Xiao Wanru in his arms. He said to the guard in black who was guarding there, "Wake them up." The guard in black nodded and lowered his body into the cave. Chu Luchen turned around and came to the edge of the mountain rock outside with Xiao Wanru in his arms. The cloak wrapped Xiao Wanru's whole body, revealing only her delicate and beautiful little face. He looked down at Xiao Wanru and found that her skin was as smooth as jade with a touch of pink. She was so beautiful under the moonlight. However, she looked a little confused and ignorant at this moment, which made her look a little pitiful. Her beautiful eyes were wide open, and even her red cherry lips seemed to show a little pity. He reached out to pinch her pretty nose and said with a smile, "Let's go." Chapter 526. Your Highness, is the passage really under here? Xiao Wanru held the window and leaned on Chu Luchen. Even though she had come up, she still felt weak all over. It was so shocking that she had never thought of it. A passageway that was dug under his quiet room. If this matter were to be made public, how horrifying would it be? It has nothing to do with you for the time being. Chu Luchen said with a smile. It was good to lean on her soft body with the fragrance of a girl in his arms. Since when does it have anything to do with me? Xiao Wanru asked sensitively. She reached out to push Chu Luchen with some strength under her feet. It may never have anything to do with you, or it may have something to do with you in the future. Chu Luchen said meaningfully. He let go of Xiao Wanru's slender waist so that she could breathe hard. Does it have anything to do with Xiao Yenru? Xiao Wanru composed herself and rolled her watery eyes. A little bit. Chu Luchen walked to the mat and sat down. He reached out and waved to Xiao Wanru. Xiao Wanru walked over with heavy feet and sat down in front of Chu Luchen. She picked up the cup of tea he poured for her and drank it up. The warm tea diluted the panic in her heart at the moment. At that moment, she was shocked not only by the surrounding environment but also by her whole body and mind. After being reborn, she thought that she could control many things. Even if she couldn't control them, she knew what she should do next. However, at that moment, she realized that what she knew was only the tip of the iceberg. It was far from enough. What she saw and what she could imagine were all just the surface of things. She had known that Xiao Yenru was not simple, but she still underestimated her, even though she only knew a little about it. Xiao Yenru, who wandered among the princes, was not simple, so how could the Duke Xing's mansion behind her be simple? She deduced that the title belonged to her father at the beginning, but later it fell into the hands of her second uncle. It might be someone else's trick. At that time, second uncle was just an ordinary child from an aristocratic family. If he had been supported at the beginning, this kind of support would be obvious. The warmth of the tea slowly spread to her heart, and she suddenly understood many things. Is there an opening to the passage in her main room? Xiao Wanru asked, holding the teacup that was refilled with water. His hand was cold, but the tea was warm. It slowly warmed his hand. Not bad. Chu Luchen shook his robe elegantly and said with a smile. No wonder Xiao Yenru insisted on living here. Later, she refused to give way to Xiao Yenru, so she couldn't live in her main room. No wonder she made Qing or leave. No wonder she could hear some sounds from time to time in Xiao Yenru's room. She said that she had been cleaning the room. After thinking it through, he shuddered even more. If he were to give this quiet room to her, the opening would definitely be here. If the matter of opening a hole here were to be exposed in the future, he would be consigned to eternal damnation. After all, he had been living here for the past 2 years. If anything were to happen, he would naturally have to bear the consequences. But now was not the time for her to completely relax. She had opened an exit there, and if something happened in the future, she would still be the first suspect. Even though the main door of her house was closed, she had occupied a bit of the yard. It was just a lock, and there were many ways to get rid of the lock. Others would only guess what she was going to do, but they wouldn't think that it was something that happened after she stayed here for a few days. It doesn't matter. No one will know about it. It involves too many things. Chu Luchen suddenly said with a smile. Xiao Wanru nodded casually. It seemed that it would involve too many things, and it wouldn't be easy for others to know about it. However, she couldn't rest assured that there was such a passage under her quiet room. Your Highness, what if I find a way to leave now? Xiao Wanru asked tentatively. Beat the grass and alert the snake. Chu Luchen leaned back and simply leaned on the mat, squinting at Xiao Wanru lazily. Will they force me to leave? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and changed the topic. Didn't they force you to leave before? You didn't leave. Chu Luchen said indifferently. Xiao Wanru's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She knew what he meant. She had stepped into it and couldn't escape even if she wanted to. If I leave at this time? Xiao Wanru thought for a while and felt that she could still struggle a little more. Since you want to enter my mansion, how can you really stay out of it? Zhuozhua, do you want to break the promise? Chu Luchen looked at her with a faint smile and his eyes looked leisurely. Xiao Wanru suddenly felt that Chu Luchen was watching her step into it. She felt inexplicably stuffy when he watched her step into it step by step. Your Highness, are you very willing to let me get involved? Could it be that you're unwilling to enter the game and accompany me? Chu Luchen turned his head and said in a light tone. His handsome eyes fell on Xiao Wanru with a gentle smile, which made Xiao Wanru feel cold. Zhuozhua, do you want to break the promise now? Of course not. Xiao Wanru said without hesitation. After saying that, she realized what she had said. She blushed slightly and turned to the side uneasily. Chu Liuchen's smile extended from the corner of his mouth to the bottom of his eyes. His eyes were sparkling and dazzling. He reached out to hold Xiao Wanru's slightly cold hand and pulled it hard. Xiao Wanru fell down with him and leaned against his chest. Your Highness, how should we deal with this matter now? Xiao Wanru reached out to push him away, but she couldn't exert much strength in this posture. After pushing him strangely, since she couldn't push him away, she simply gave up. Just watch. Chu Luchen said with a faint smile. He meant that they should sit on the top of the mountain and watch the tigers fight. The mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. What should I do? Xiao Wanru asked subconsciously. Just watch. Chu Luchen still said slowly. The hairpin on her hair was pulled out by Chu Luchen. Her black hair was so loose that half of it was spread on Chu Liuchen's body. Smelling the faint fragrance of her hair, Chu Luchen closed his eyes slightly. He asked her to watch, which meant that there would be no danger for the time being. Xiao Wanru breathed a sigh of relief and thought about it carefully. Her hair was stroked a few times, and she inexplicably became clear-headed. Even if Xiao Yenru knew something, it was impossible for her to know everything. She should know about the opening, and it might even be her idea to open the opening here. Even if the passage appeared, if something really happened, it could only be traced back to her. That should be what she thought. The passage dug in the Yuhui nunnery should have something to do with the people in the Yuhui nunnery. The most suspicious people in the Yuhui nunnery were the former emperor's S. The former emperor's S were just some women who were completely useless. Moreover, the former emperor had passed away for many years. Even if there was something in the past years, shouldn't it have been searched long ago? If the former emperor left something important for others to spy on, shouldn't those S have been searched long ago when they were sent in? It seemed a little unreal to check it now. Thinking of what she and Chu Luchen saw under the night that day, her heart suddenly moved. Those S wanted to contact the outside world urgently. What on earth did they want to do? What do the former emperor's S want to do? After a long while, Xiao Wanru couldn't help asking. Of course it's wishful thinking. Chu Luchen closed his eyes and said lightly. The faint fragrance on the girl made him relax and feel sleepy. He reached out to pull her closer and put his head on the top of Xiao Wanru's hair. Someone thinks that I have a good life under my uncle. Since the former emperor's son has a good life, why don't you find another one? His words were spoken in an extremely leisurely manner, with a hint of mockery, as if he was speaking as an outsider. Xiao Wanru suddenly woke up and tried to look up at Chu Luchen. The moon tonight was not conspicuous, but she could still see Chu Liuchen's handsome face, which was as beautiful as a banished immortal. He looked a little pale and weak, but he made people feel that he was as beautiful as jade porcelain. Delicate and fragile. Of course, these were just appearances. Xiao Wanru blinked her long eyelashes and didn't know what to say for a moment. She subconsciously reached out to gently touch his face, which was as white as jade. But the next moment, she immediately withdrew her hand as if she was startled. She closed her eyes and didn't move at all, as if what she had done just now was just an accidental action. She buried her whole head in Chu Liuchen's arms, and her heart inexplicably beat wildly. She actually reached out to touch the face of this temperamental evildoer, although he seemed to be asleep when she looked at him just now. Xiao Wanru felt that she was really crazy. Who was this? The crown prince, who would defeat all his opponents in the future and stand high above the imperial palace, regained the emperor's favor as a nephew. How could he let her sympathize with his illness and weakness? Or even if he was indeed sick and weak, he was not as weak as she thought. Why did he make a move just now? Even in the darkness, she felt that her face blushed and became hot. Chu Luchen had already opened his eyes and slightly lowered his eyes to look at the girl in front of him, who closed her eyes tightly. Like a frightened rabbit, she buried her head in his arms, but she didn't find that her pink ears had already exposed her thoughts. She was obviously uneasy and too shy to raise her head, but she still wanted to pretend to be calm. Should he tease her and continue the topic just now, or should he talk about something else, lest she really get angry out of shame? But seeing that she looked so shy and pitiful, he decided to let her go this time. He simply reached out to hug her again and said casually, "When the time is up, go down the mountain. Don't stay here for too long and don't come here in the future." His words were so meaningful that Xiao Wanru was so shy that she couldn't raise her head. Fortunately, he didn't say this and change the topic, which made the blush on Xiao Wanru's face fade a little. She calmed down and asked, "Will there be anything happening in the passage recently?" "Everything will be fine." Chu Luchen nodded and said, "But don't sleep alone in this silence room in the future. Let Qing sleep with you." Chapter 527. Will Xiao Yanru expose it? Xiao Wanru thought for a while, rolled her watery eyes, and asked. "She doesn't dare." Chu Luchen suddenly said meaningfully. It meant that if she didn't expose it, Xiao Yanru would never take the initiative to do so. The exit was now in her main room. Even though she had gone down the mountain, she was the owner of the main room after all. She couldn't get away with it, neither could she. Now both she and Xiao Yanru knew something about it, but neither of them knew what was behind it. In this regard, they were equal. In this case, there was no need to change the original way to deal with Xiao Yanru. Her watery eyelashes fluttered twice, and her long, butterfly-like eyelashes drooped slightly. After thinking for a while, she said, "Your Highness, it's getting late. You'd better go back early." There were some things that she didn't want to get involved in too much. Her life in the last life was a tragedy, but Chu Luchen could trample on everyone with his own strength. If she got involved too much, it might not be a blessing. Are you going to drive me away now? Chu Liuchen's hand caressed her hair from time to time. Something happened to Xiao Yanru today. I'm afraid that she will be guilty and make things difficult for you tomorrow morning. Xiao Wanru pushed Chu Luchen and said, You have to wait until tomorrow. Chu Luchen became more and more careless. Your Highness. Xiao Wanru reached out to pull his robe and said helplessly. If she let him wait any longer, she would really be unable to get up tomorrow. It's your birthday in 2 days. I'll ask someone to send you a birthday gift. Chu Luchen looked at her and suddenly chuckled. Xiao Wanru was stunned and raised her head vigilantly. In the past, Chu Luchen had also prepared birthday gifts for her, but he had never told her in advance. He came here and sent her a birthday gift directly. Chu Luchen let go of Xiao Wanru, stood up, tidied up his clothes, looked back at Xiao Wanru's wide, watery eyes and said, I'll ask someone to send it here. He deliberately emphasized the words, have someone send it. Then, under Xiao Wanru's surprised look, he raised the corners of his thin lips, showed a handsome smile, and jumped down from the window. Knowing that there were rocks outside the window for her to stand on, Xiao Wanru was not so frightened. After thinking for a while, she walked to the window and closed it. Then she leaned against the window and frowned slightly. Early the next morning, Xiao Wanru was woken up by Chu Li's anxious cry. She looked at Chu Li's face blankly and rubbed the area between her eyebrows after a long while. She went to bed late last night. Because of the horror of the passage, she didn't sleep well all night. She seemed to hear Chu Li's voice as soon as she fell asleep in a daze. What is it? Xiao Wanru said weakly. Miss, it's not good. Eldest miss has fallen, and it's very serious. She's asking the doctor to come and see her. As Chu Lu said, she helped Xiao Wanru sit up and said, Sister Yujia means that you'd better go and have a look first. Since her cousin had fallen and hurt her leg, of course, she had to go and see her cousin. She looked at the sky outside the window and found that it was not dawn yet. It was indeed a little early to make a fuss. She rubbed her eyes and helped Chu Lu to get up. Yujia had already prepared the things to wash up. After washing up, Xiao Wanru took Yujia to Xiao Yanru's room. As soon as they arrived at the door, Shuqi came out before knocking on the door. Seeing Xiao Wanru coming over, she hurriedly bowed to greet her. How did your miss get hurt? Xiao Wanru asked. I don't know. She was fine during the day yesterday, but it was a little inconvenient for her to walk. At night, she didn't seem to be seriously injured. I thought she would recover after a while, but I didn't expect that she would be swollen after a night's sleep. Shuqi said with a tired face. It seemed that she hadn't slept well last night. Have you asked the doctor? Xiao Wanru asked as she walked in. Yes, but it has to be approved by the officials of the Ministry of Justice. Just now, I have asked the masters in the Yuhui nunnery to ask for instructions. Shuqi said in a hurry. Something had happened during the day yesterday, and it was inconvenient for her to walk after that. Therefore, even if the officials of the Ministry of Justice saw a woman, they didn't think it was her. Xiao Yanru's idea was good. Not only did she expose her injury, but she also silently explained that the woman who had a tryst last night was not her. Next, it depended on the cooperation between Qi Tianyu and her. However, she also wanted to see the cooperation between Qi Tianyu and Xiao Yanru. After entering the inner room, she saw Xiao Yanru lying on the bed with a pale and haggard face, which really made her believe that it was true. Since Shuqi said so, Xiao Wanru naturally took it seriously. The two of them seemed to have forgotten what had happened last night. After a few gentle greetings, the doctor came. The doctor was not specially sent down the mountain, but from the Ministry of Justice. There had been injured people on the mountain before, so the Ministry of Justice brought the doctor up the mountain at that time. At this time, hearing that Xiao Yanru wanted to use the doctor, they naturally brought the doctor over. Coincidentally, the one who brought the doctor was Qiuyu. Before the doctor entered the room, Xiao Wanru hid behind the gauze curtain. The gauze curtain on the bed was also dropped, and the old doctor walked in slowly under the guidance of Shuqi. Xiao Yanru stretched out her hand from the bed, and the old doctor reached out to feel her pulse. Qiuyu also followed her in. One master was on the bed, The other master was behind the bed, and the rest were all maids. No one dared to drive him away, so he directly entered the room. After the old doctor finished feeling the pulse, Chiou asked anxiously before Shuchi could say anything, "How is it? Can you see the wound?" The old doctor hesitated for a moment and said, he had to see the wound with his own eyes, but he was very particular about the treatment of a miss from an aristocratic family. Of course, Xiao Yanru said a little breathlessly. Shuchi hurriedly reached out to help her stretch out her foot from the gauze curtain. After the old doctor saw it, she hurriedly pushed Xiao Yanru's foot into the gauze curtain. Xiao Wanru also saw it clearly. It was indeed bruised and swollen. Her eyes darkened. It was true. Xiao Yanru was a ruthless person. The injury should have been caused by her after she came back yesterday. The old doctor stroked his long beard, nodded, and said, "Is there any stimulating pain when pressing it?" "There is no particularly stimulating pain, just a dull pain in every part." Shuchi had already prepared the answer. "She did sprain her ankle. She is weak, but it is not serious. Her muscles and bones are not hurt. She will be fine after resting for a few days. Remember not to get out of bed and walk. I happen to have some ointment here. You can apply some on it 3 times a day, and it should gradually disappear." The old doctor took out a small porcelain bottle from the medicine box and said. Shuchi nodded repeatedly, hurriedly took it, and asked, "Doctor, what should I pay attention to?" "Pay attention to what you eat. Don't eat too much greasy food. In addition, you can't move for a few days and can only lie in bed. Fortunately, your miss hasn't walked much after being injured. Otherwise, it will not be a problem for a few days." The old doctor exhorted. "After being injured, my miss is afraid that her injury will become serious, so she has been staying in her room since she came back yesterday." Shuchi nodded repeatedly and looked relieved. Chiou suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. Sure enough, he didn't misjudge her. How could such a beautiful first Miss Xiao meet Qi Tianyu in private? After coming back yesterday, he had asked Qi Tianyu in private, but Qi Tianyu had always said that he had never seen the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Although his sister was the adopted daughter of Madame of Duke Xing, there was a difference between a man and a woman. As an adopted daughter's sister, she was not a close relative. Of course, he had never seen the first Miss Xiao. As for the word Ru, it was really a coincidence. His confidant happened to have the word Ru in her name. Last night, Chiou had been skeptical, but now he felt that Qi Tianyu was indeed his good buddy. What Qi Tianyu said was true. The first Miss Xiao had injured her foot during the day yesterday, and the old doctor also proved that she couldn't walk much. So the woman last night must not be her. But this servant girl inexplicably seemed to be Shuchi. Last night, everyone's attention was on Xiao Yanru. The servant girl's face was not covered, but no one noticed her. After that, the person who wanted to pay attention to her disappeared. In this way, he might have taken it for granted yesterday that the servant girl was the one in front of him. It was obvious that he had thought wrong and misjudged her. Thinking of this, Chiou felt at ease. Yesterday, although his brothers promised not to spread this kind of thing, their words were not pleasant to hear. Now he could be considered to be in the right. "I also have the medicine for hurting muscles and bones. Why don't you send some to the first Miss Xiao later?" Chiou said with a smile and glanced at the hanging gauze curtain. The gauze curtain was drooping, and he could only vaguely see a person's figure. Then his eyes fell on her half-exposed hand, which had smooth skin, which was really attractive. "Thank you, Your Excellency, but it's not necessary. The doctor's medicine is enough." Of course, Shuchi knew that her master would not take a fancy to the official in front of her, so she immediately refused him tactfully. Her master cherished her reputation so much that she would never allow the slightest rumor about her to be spread by someone she didn't like. This official was obviously in love with her master. Shuchi had seen this kind of thing many times in the past, so she really didn't take it seriously. In the past, she had refused many people for her master, so Shuchi could be said to be very handy. Her master only wanted this official to testify, and she didn't want to entangle with him. "Is the medicine in your hand better than that of the doctor?" A voice suddenly came from behind the gauze curtain. Yes, yes, it's better, much better. It was given by the Imperial Palace at that time. Chiao Yu looked at the curtain in surprise and involuntarily showed a smile on his face. He had thought that he was a little embarrassed because of Shuqi's refusal, but he immediately smiled. As expected, the first Miss Xiao treated him differently. It was not her intention to refuse him. Since it was given by the Imperial Palace, it must be good. I hope you can give my big sister some. Xiao Wanru's voice continued to come from behind the gauze curtain. Her words were sincere and her voice was soft and clear. Chapter 528. Speaking of the fifth miss, Chiao Yu suddenly felt angry. It was obvious that the woman last night was not the first Miss Xiao, but his younger sister kept hinting that it was the first Miss Xiao. The fifth miss was very vicious at a young age, and she was really not a good person. According to his character, he would directly rebuke her. However, since the medicine was sent to his sweetheart, he would not ruin such a good opportunity, so he nodded at once. After I go back, I will have someone send it here. Please accept it, first Miss Xiao. It can be regarded as a gift from Chiao Yu. After saying that, he bowed respectfully to Xiao Yenru in the gauze curtain, ignored Xiao Wanru, snorted coldly in Xiao Wanru's direction, and turned to leave with the doctor. The first Miss Xiao was a good person. He had to find an opportunity to remind the first Miss Xiao to pay attention to the fifth Miss Xiao. She shouldn't be so kind as to be coaxed without knowing it. Your Excellency. Shuqi still wanted to refuse, but Chiao Yu had strode away. She was anxious to chase after him, but she felt it inappropriate. She could only look back at Xiao Yenru, who was lying on the bed. Why couldn't she get rid of this person just now? Didn't she just borrow him for a while? How dare he covet her master? Didn't he know whether he was qualified or not? Chiao Yu acted quickly and sincerely. Before long, he came to deliver the medicine in person again. Qing opened the door and then went to invite Shuqi out. Although Shuqi got Xiao Yenru's permission and refused several times, she had no choice but to accept the medicine when she found that she couldn't refuse it and even attracted others' attention. After taking the medicine into the room and closing the door, she went into the inner room and apologized to Xiao Yenru. First miss, the medicine. I couldn't refuse it. Later, a nun passed by. I was afraid that someone would see it, so I took it. Take it first. Under the shadow of the bed, Xiao Yenru's face was gloomy. She made a wrong move and was set up by Xiao Wanru. However, she was the cause of it, so she had to suffer the grievance in silence. In fact, this person could be a witness to prove her innocence. After all, when they met for the first time, he specially came to deliver a message on behalf of Qi Tianyu. Later, she sent Shuqi over with the intention of delivering a message on behalf of Xiao Wanru. She might be able to use this person one day, so she couldn't refuse him bluntly and offend him. Miss, this servant will help you apply more ointment. Seeing that Xiao Yenru didn't blame her, Shuqi breathed a sigh of relief, bent down, knelt in front of the bed, and turned over the quilt behind Xiao Yenru's feet. Xiao Yenru really sprained her ankle. She deliberately sprained it after coming back and was delayed until this morning. Her ankle was swollen, but fortunately, it didn't hurt her bone. First miss, since it has been sent here, please use that ointment. Your foot is injured. If you use a mediocre ointment, it may not be able to heal completely. Looking at the ointment in her hand, Shuqi hesitated. It would be a big deal if he really hurt the eldest miss's leg. First miss, if you like it, you can ask the first young master to send someone to give it a gift when we go back. Of course, Shuqi understood her master's concern. Seeing Xiao Yenru remain silent for a long time, she persuaded her master again. Okay, just use it. Xiao Yenru's words were exactly what she wanted, so she immediately nodded and said. Shuqi was overjoyed. She hurriedly got up to change the ointment on the table, wiped off the previous ointment, and then carefully rubbed Xiao Yenru's wound and applied the ointment on it. The ointment given by the Imperial Palace was really good. As soon as it was applied, Xiao Yenru felt cool, which was much better than the ointment given by the old doctor. After applying the medicine, Shuqi carefully pushed Xiao Yenru's legs to the bed, went out to wash her hands again, and came in with a cup of tea. First miss, Hui Qing Nun came over just now and wanted to come in to see you, but was refused by the 5th Mississippi, Shuqi said carefully and put the teacup on the table in front of Xiao Yenru. When she went out to wash her hands just now, she met the news from Qing. She refused? Xiao Yenru's face grew colder and colder. Yes, she just asked Hui Qing Nun to go back because she was afraid of delaying your rest. Shuqi's expression was not very good. She was the personal maid of the 1st Mississippi. In the past, everyone in the mansion would flatter her. She did not expect that she would have to flatter a lowly maid to ask for information one day. How dare she? Xiao Yenru clenched the corner of the quilt tightly and scratched the quilt with her sharp fingers. Seeing that she was furious, Shuqi didn't dare to speak anymore. After a long while, Xiao Yenru calmed down. Although she looked cold, the anger on her face had subsided. She said, "You should live in seclusion these days. If an great elder princess comes over, report to me and I'll go to greet her. If not, you can stay here to recuperate." After such a scene, now everyone should know that she had been injured long ago. The woman who appeared with Qi Tianyu last night couldn't be her. The Yuhui nunnery had been sealed. In addition to the nuns, there were many pilgrims and female relatives in it. There were many possibilities even if it wasn't her. She was a little too impatient about this matter. And great elder princess came over after lunch. Hearing that Xiao Yenru had an accident, she specially sent someone to ask about it. Unexpectedly, Xiao Yenru had come to greet her with her injured foot after washing up. After that, Xiao Yenru talked with and great elder princess for a while. Seeing that Xiao Yenru's face was pale, and great elder princess asked her to go to rest and didn't need to accompany her. Xiao Yenru chatted with and great elder princess respectfully for a while and then left with Shuqi's hand. Looking at her back, and great elder princess frowned and looked at Xiao Yenru thoughtfully. She said, "When she was young, I took her to and great elder princess's mansion to raise her for a period of time." "Grandma, you raised her?" Xiao Wenru was shocked. She really didn't know about it. Not for long, only about half a year. At that time she looked really cute. She was dressed like a pink jade and had a sweet voice. At that time, my relationship with Duke Xing's mansion was not good, but we didn't fall out. When she came to our mansion as a guest, she looked obedient and cute and was very willing to get close to me, so I let her live in our mansion. I didn't expect that she had lived in our mansion for about half a year. And great elder princess sighed. Girls at the age of 5 or 6 were at their most adorable age. They were round, chubby, and sweet. And great elder princess didn't have any children. Seeing that Xiao Yenru was so close to her, she shamelessly let her stay in the mansion. Madame of Duke Xing naturally didn't say anything. Although old Madame of Duke Xing was unwilling, she didn't refuse. Looking at old Madame of Duke Xing's reluctant look, and great elder princess suddenly felt very relieved and wanted to raise this child in her mansion. At that time, your mother was not around and I didn't know where she had gone. I was very lonely. I was actually very happy to have such an innocent child to accompany me. In addition, I could make the old woman in your mansion unhappy, so I delayed the time. Prince Yu, Prince Zhou, and Prince Chen were also young at that time and occasionally came to my mansion to play. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou came more often, especially after Xiao Yenru came to my mansion. Only Prince Chen was in poor health, so he only came a few times in half a year. It's hard to say whether he met them or not. And great elder princess frowned more and more. Xiao Wenru rolled her watery eyes and suddenly widened her eyes. "Grandma, do you mean that they were childhood sweethearts?" And great elder princess reached out to touch her granddaughter's head, praised her granddaughter's intelligence, and said with a smile, "Or you can say so." At least during that period of time, Prince Zhou and Prince Yu came more often and then less often. It can be seen that they had a good time with Xiao Yenru at that time. Then why did they leave after that? Xiao Wenru thought for a while and said, "Since her grandma wanted to make old Madame of Duke Xing aggrieved and was willing to raise her because Xiao Yenru was close to her, why did she give up after only raising her for half a year?" Later, I felt that this child looked obedient, lovely, filial to me and would come to greet me from time to time. She didn't look like a child of 5 or 6 years old. Her appearance and behavior reminded me of her mother. Her mother was raised in Duke Xing's mansion since she was a child. I heard that she was very careful in everything and was especially filial to the old woman in Duke Xing's mansion, so your mother was forced out of Duke Xing's mansion. At the thought of this, I feel sick of her. And Great Elder Princess showed a trace of tiredness on her face. As long as she thought that the girl in front of her would grow up to be like her mother, and Great Elder Princess couldn't like her and even felt that everything Xiao Yinru did in front of her was purposeful, just like what Madame of Duke Xing did to old Madame of Duke Xing's mansion in those days. No matter how lovely Xiao Yinru was, she was far from being comparable to her biological daughter. However, and Great Elder Princess couldn't vent her anger on a child, so she asked Xiao Yinru to go home. When she left, she cried and hugged my leg, saying that she would accompany me forever and serve me wholeheartedly. She just asked me not to drive her away. Then Great Elder Princess said in a low voice with a hint of sarcasm on her lips. I've seen a lot of such words, but most of them are said by children over 10 years old. She's only 5 or 6 years old. Hearing her words, then Great Elder Princess, who was a little hesitant at first, immediately asked someone to carry her back to Duke Xing's mansion and then ignored her. Xiao Wanru understood that what Xiao Yinru said should not be what a child of her age should say. And Great Elder Princess had been through a lot, so how could she be deceived by a child? She must have felt that there was something wrong, so she directly took Xiao Yinru away. Since then, Xiao Yinru had no chance to cling on to her. It turned out that Xiao Yinru, Prince Yu and Prince Zhou were childhood sweethearts. No wonder she had the chance to hesitate in front of the two princes and couldn't make up her mind. A child who was only 5 or 6 years old knew how to cling on to her grandmother at such a young age. Thinking about it carefully, it was extremely terrible. Grandma, don't worry. I won't be deceived by her appearance, Xiao Wanru said softly. She knew what and Great Elder Princess meant by saying these words to her. Chapter 529. Although and Great Elder Princess had always been arrogant in public, she was actually a cautious person. She said so because she was worried about Xiao Wanru. The first miss of Duke Xing's mansion was the most outstanding one. The whole capital city knew that she was extremely beautiful and dignified. Moreover, she was the eldest lineal daughter of Duke Xing. She was excellent in all aspects. It could even be said that there was no woman better than her in the whole capital city. However, her granddaughter was even more outstanding. In terms of appearance, and Great Elder Princess didn't think it was because of her partiality. Her granddaughter was really beautiful. Looking at her pink little face, red lips, and dark watery eyes, even at a glance, she made people feel that she was extremely charming, but she didn't lose the charm of the lower class. There was a kind of extraordinary elegance in her behavior. Just a glance at her would definitely make people stunned. More than 2 years ago, when Xiao Wanru was still a little girl, and Great Elder Princess knew that her granddaughter would grow up to be a beauty, but she didn't expect that she would be so beautiful. Xiao Yinru's background was Duke Xing's mansion. Although Xiao Wanru was not favored by Duke Xing's mansion, she was the lineal granddaughter of Duke Xing's mansion on the surface. In addition, she was her granddaughter, so Xiao Yinru had no advantage in this regard. As for reputation and conduct, Xiao Yinru had the reputation of observing mourning for her parents for 3 years, so her granddaughter's reputation was not bad. Just based on these points, and Great Elder Princess felt that this first Miss Xiao would never have any good intentions towards Xiao Wanru. Looking at Xiao Yinru's indifferent attitude towards her and Xiao Wanru just now, she increasingly felt that everything Xiao Yinru did was an act. She was worried about her granddaughter, so she mentioned the past, which she had almost forgotten, to remind her granddaughter to be careful. The next few days were very peaceful. And Great Elder Princess came to visit Xiao Wanru from time to time. However, because Xiao Wanru was cultivating in seclusion, it was inconvenient for her to visit her even though she was her grandmother. Later, because she had to take care of Xiao Yuanhao at the foot of the mountain, she went down the mountain after reporting to the emperor in the Imperial palace. Xiao Yinru was very polite. Every time and Great Elder Princess came over, She would come over to sit with her and force herself to chat with her. She was so polite that even and great elder princess couldn't find any fault with her. After a few days, it was Xiao Wanru's birthday. Early in the morning, Yu Jie went to the kitchen of the Yuhui nunnery and made a bowl of longevity noodles for Xiao Wanru. In the past 2 years, Yu Jie had done this every year on Xiao Wanru's birthday. It was simple, happy, and did not disturb anyone else. Hearing the knock on the door, Qing hurriedly put down the big broom in her hand and ran out to open the door. There were 2 misses and 3 principal servant girls in the yard. Qing was the only servant girl who did the rough work. So, of course, she was in charge of the cleaning in the yard. Fortunately, Qing was quick and efficient. Sometimes she could even help Yu Jie and Chu Lu to do the cleaning. When the door opened, Chu Liuchen's handsome and pale face appeared behind the door. Qing froze for a moment and then immediately took 2 steps forward to stop him. She asked warily, "Child, what can I do for you?" "My master is tired after walking. He wants to have a rest and ask for a glass of water." Xiao Xuanzi came out from behind Chu Luchen and narrowed his eyes into a line with a smile. Qing looked them up and down, as if she really didn't recognize them. She blocked the door and said, "There are only 2 misses here. It's not convenient for you to come in. Just have a rest in your corridor. My master really needs a rest, otherwise he won't be able to walk." Xiao Xuanzi reached out to help Chu Luchen. His sickly face immediately showed that he was indeed in poor health. Tier hesitated, looked them up and down a few more times, and said, "You wait here. I'll go and ask my miss." "Go ahead. We'll wait for you." Xiao Xuanzi immediately beamed with joy and waved his hand. Qing turned around and walked into the yard. Chu Luchen walked in slowly with Xiao Xuanzi's hand. Under the big tree in the yard, there were stone tables and stone stools. Xiao Xuanzi took 2 steps forward, took out a handkerchief from his bosom, wiped the stone stools and stone tables clean, and invited Chu Luchen to sit down. Xiao Wanru, who was in the room, also got the news and was stunned. She had heard from Chu Luchen that he would send someone to give her a gift on her birthday. Why did he come here openly? "Is it Prince Chen?" she asked again in disbelief. "What? It's Prince Chen." Qing nodded repeatedly and smiled widely. She had long known the relationship between the prince and her Mississippi. Seeing that the prince was so sincere to her miss, she became increasingly happy. "Please come in and have a seat. Tell him that I thank him for saving my life." Xiao Wanru thought for a while and gave a reason. Everyone knew that she was saved by Chu Luchen at the gate of the Imperial Palace that day, so there was no need to avoid meeting him. It seemed a little too stiff. "Yes, I'll go to invite Prince Chen right away." Qing went out happily. When she came to the yard and saw Chu Luchen sitting under the tree, she hurriedly knelt down and apologized. "I didn't know it was you, Your Highness, so I was scolded by my miss just now. My miss said that she still has to thank you for saving her life. Please come in and have a seat." Chu Luchen stood up, glanced at the whole yard with his beautiful eyes, and said calmly, "Let's go." He was dressed in a lavender cloak with a circle of snow-colored fur, which made him look as handsome as jade. If it weren't for his pale face, his appearance would be amazing. Under the window of the main room, Xiao Yanru's eyes also fell on Chu Liuchen's face. His handsome face had amazed her when she was very young. At that time, she was still young and was liked by Ru, and Great Elder Princess. She was raised in Great Elder Princess's mansion and got to know Prince Zhou and Prince Yu. The wet nurse beside her told her mother that she must flatter the 2 little princes. She had been smart since she was a child. Of course, she obeyed her mother and won the favor of the 2 little princes. She also liked to play with them. Since she played with the 2 little princes, she keenly felt that even the servants around her had become cautious. At first, the servants around the little princes looked down on her, but later they became respectful to her. But later, she met Prince Chen. The little Prince Chen was sitting quietly in the pavilion, as beautiful as a painting. Xiao Yanru felt that she had never seen such a good-looking child and wanted to play with him, so she ran over. Unexpectedly, before she got close, she was stopped and scolded for not allowing her to go over. Xiao Yanru burst into tears. Then she saw the unbelievably beautiful child turn his head and look at her coldly. Seeing his cold eyes, she dared not cry anymore. She wiped away her tears in panic and threw herself into the arms of the wet nurse. She met Chu Luchen a few times later, but she failed to get close to him. In her heart, this little prince was a beautiful and unrealistic dream. Later, she learned from Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou in private that this was the third prince, Chu Luchen, who was the first to be conferred the title of Prince Chen soon after he was born. In the words of the two princes, the third prince was a sick child who would not live long and no one knew when he would die. Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou's words in private were not pleasant to hear. They all said that he was sick and could not play with others. If he accidentally played with others, he might die. The Empress Dowager and the Emperor both forbade me to play with him. Even if I just talked with him, I was afraid that I would blow him away. He was a good-for-nothing made of porcelain. In order to have a better time with Chu Luiyue and Chu Liuzhou, Xiao Yanru certainly did not speak ill of Chu Luchen. She was also full of malice toward Prince Chen, who was unwilling to play with her. But even so, when she looked at him from a distance, she still felt that he was as beautiful as a painting. How could there be such a beautiful child? Now, Prince Chen, who used to be as beautiful as a dream and could not distinguish whether he was a man or a woman, had grown up. Although he was still so sick and pale and looked almost thin, he was still as handsome as a god. His wide sleeves fluttered as he walked. Go and find out why Prince Chen came here. Xiao Yanru withdrew her gaze with a trace of gloominess in her eyes and ordered. Shuqi answered and left. After a while, she found out that Qing, a silly and rough servant girl, was the only one in the whole courtyard. In the past, it was the easiest for her to find out what happened. Shuqi sent Qing a lot of things in private, so that Qing told her everything she knew. Miss, it is said that Prince Chen came to the Yuhui nunnery. When he came here, he couldn't walk anymore, so he came in to rest and wanted to ask for a glass of water to drink. The fifth miss recognized Prince Chen and invited him into the room to talk. She said that Prince Chen saved the fifth miss's life at the gate of the palace before. Shuqi said. She had just heard about it and did not care about it. Xiao Yanru fell silent for a moment. She had also heard about it. Although she was on the mountain at that time, this matter and the following series of things attracted her attention. She felt strange at that time. Was Prince Chen such a warm-hearted person? Why didn't she know about it? She specially sent someone down the mountain to ask about it. Madame of Duke Xing wrote her a letter, told her the cause and effect of this matter, and asked her to burn the letter after reading it. Actually, it was her mother who asked Countess Yong to do it at the gate of the palace. Unexpectedly, there was an accident and Prince Chen was involved. The matter became more serious. Later, everyone thought that Xiao Wanru was implicated by Prince Chen. This matter had nothing to do with Xiao Wanru at all, but the whole capital city was under martial law. It sounded like an accident, but Xiao Yanru did not think so. Thinking of the time when she fought with Xiao Wanru was unscathed, and she even had to hurt herself to prove her innocence. Let's go and have a look. After thinking for a while, Xiao Yanru stood up with the help of the table. In fact, she had almost recovered, but every time she went out, she still looked inconvenient. Chapter 530. When Xiao Yanru came over, Xiao Wanru and Chu Luchen had already sat opposite each other on the mat. Chu Lu served tea and then retreated to the door. Xiao Xuanzi stood beside her with a smile, looking very amiable. Why are you here, Your Highness? Xiao Wanru looked Chu Luchen up and down and asked in confusion. I came as I wanted. Chu Luchen raised his beautiful eyes and said casually. Didn't Your Highness say? Xiao Wanru said tentatively. Before she finished speaking, she heard Chu Li's voice at the door. Greetings, First Miss. She slowly closed her cherry lips and turned her watery eyes from Chu Luchen to the door. Your fifth miss has gotten up. Xiao Yanru's gentle voice was very pleasant. My miss has gotten up, but... Chu Lu seemed to want to stop her, but was interrupted by Xiao Yanru gently. That's good. I'll go to see my fifth sister. Xiao Yanru appeared at the door. She seemed to be stunned when she saw Chu Luchen, and then walked in gracefully. Greetings, Your Highness. Walking up to Chu Luchen, Xiao Yanru turned sideways and bowed to him respectfully. Because of her inconvenient feet, she lost her balance and almost fell down. Shuqi quickly held her up in case she fell down. Xiao Yanru blushed and gently pushed Shuqi, seeming to be ashamed of her rudeness, but she didn't explain. What's the matter, First Miss Xiao? Chu Luchen looked up at Xiao Yanru and asked calmly, as if he didn't see Xiao Yanru's gentleness and forbearance. I came to see my fifth sister. I didn't expect that Your Highness is here. Xiao Yanru lowered her head and said with a blush. I'm tired, so I came to ask for a cup of tea from my cousin. Chu Luchen picked up the tea at hand, took a sip, slowly put it down, and then looked sideways at Xiao Yanru. Xiao Wanru was the granddaughter of and great elder princess, so they could certainly be considered cousins. The topic of cousins inevitably reminded Xiao Yanru of her childhood. At that time, she wished so much that she was the granddaughter of and great elder princess. It became strangely quiet in the room. Xiao Yanru stood there awkwardly for a long time. Seeing that neither of them spoke, she had to say goodbye softly. Chu Luchen waved his hand, and Xiao Yanru left with a flushed face. When she reached the door, she could hardly control the anger in her heart. Xiao Wanru dared to sit there casually without saying a word, as if she was just an ordinary servant girl. She gritted her teeth, suppressed the anger in her heart, put on a gentle look, smiled gently at Xiao Xuanzi at the door, and then walked away slowly with Shuqi. He was just a sickly child. Even if he looked the best, he wouldn't be able to compare to the glory and wealth that he was about to obtain. Xiao Wanru just had a good reincarnation. If she was really the granddaughter of and great elder princess, she and the princes would certainly be cousins. But even if she was not, it didn't matter. Prince Yu and Prince Zhou still took pity on her very much, which was even more unusual. Xiao Yanru and walked into and said, Shuqi. Shuqi said, Xiao Shuqi, Shuqi, Yanru, Yanru Ru Yan walked. Wasn't Prince Chen so sick that he couldn't get up? Why did he come up the mountain? Why did he come to Xiao Wanru's courtyard so coincidentally? Was it really a coincidence? She was inexplicably angry, and the corners of her eyes turned cold. Cousin? After Xiao Yanru left, Xiao Wanru laughed. Zhua, don't you think so? Chu Luchen raised his eyes and said calmly. Then he pointed at the teacup in front of him with his chin and said naturally, I'm thirsty. Pour me another cup. Your Highness, if you want to drink tea, why don't you drink it in your own mansion? Although Xiao Wanru reached out to pour him a cup, she said angrily. Of course not. I'm still hungry, so I especially come here to ask for a bowl of longevity noodles. I heard that the noodles here are very good, Luozhua. Chu Luchen picked up the teacup and took a sip, pretending to be lost in thought and said, Your Highness, aren't you afraid that someone will ask about it? Xiao Wanru, who was not as good-tempered as him, glared at him and said, he had been a little busy coming and going, so she was afraid that someone would notice it. Moreover, he usually came here secretly in the past, but this time he came here openly, not afraid of arousing others' suspicion. Xiao Yanru, who lived next door, obviously came to inquire about the news just now. Seeing that she was driven away mercilessly by Chu Luchen, Xiao Wanru felt inexplicably happy in her heart. What are you afraid of? I went to see my Imperial grandmother before I came here. Chu Luchen said lazily, leaned back again, and reached out to support his head, looking extremely lazy. Xiao Wanru gasped and was shocked. Your Highness, have you told the Empress Dowager? Why can't I tell her? At that time, it was inconvenient for me to make an engagement because you were going up the mountain to observe mourning. Now you are going down the mountain, so I don't have to avoid it. Chu Luchen looked at her sideways and said slowly. Xiao Wanru was flustered. Looking at his natural look, she didn't know what to say and only felt very confused. Zhua, do you mean that I don't need to say anything? Not only my Imperial grandmother knows about us, but also Ru and great elder princess. Chu Luchen snorted coldly and said unhappily. He reached out to grab Xiao Wanru's delicate hand and dragged her so that she almost hit the table and lay down on the mat. Her hand was held by Chu Luchen and he bit her hard, which made Xiao Wanru cry out in pain, and her eyes immediately filled with tears. Your Highness, how could you bite me? Xiao Wanru pouted her cherry lips and complained aggrievedly. Why can't I bite you? When I get angry, I will eat you. Chu Luchen looked at the bite marks on the back of Xiao Wanru's delicate white hand and showed a little complacency on his face. Your Highness, you are a prince. You should pay attention to your identity. Xiao Wanru felt that she was very calm, otherwise she also wanted to bite back. Isn't my identity Zhuozhuo's fiancé? Why can't I come to see my fiancé? Do I need to do it secretly? Chu Luchen said casually. Xiao Wanru swallowed her saliva and peeped at the door with a blush. She didn't know when the door was half closed, and Chu Lu and Xiao Xuanzi were not in front of her. Your Highness, did you tell the Empress Dowager that you would come to see me? Xiao Wanru breathed a sigh of relief in her heart. Although her face was still red, she didn't look as nervous as before. Of course, I forced myself to go up the mountain to celebrate your birthday. Otherwise, I wouldn't have to do this. Seeing Xiao Wanru's delicate facial features wrinkled together, Chu Luchen was in a good mood, so he didn't make things difficult for her. He just held her hand in his big hand and turned around lazily. Your Highness, aren't you afraid that others will know? Xiao Wanru was still worried. What's wrong with me wanting to marry a wife? Are you going to stop me from marrying one? Chu Luchen squinted at Xiao Wanru and said discontentedly. Your Highness, didn't you mean that you don't want to marry a wife, so you want me to be your shield? Xiao Wanru tried her best to calm down, looked at him with her eyes wide open and asked. If you marry me, won't you be my shield? Could it be that you really don't want to be this king's shield? Do you still want to marry someone else? Chu Luchen said in an unkind tone. Xiao Wanru had never thought about marrying someone else. Since she was reborn and was tied to Chu Luchen, Xiao Wanru had never thought about it. She immediately shook her head and said, Your Highness, you really think too much. How could that be? Since that's the case, don't ask more. I have my own plan. You just need to enter my mansion at that time. Or are you not satisfied with me? Chu Luchen loosened his hand and raised Xiao Wanru's hand so that she could clearly see the bite mark on the back of her hand. Your Highness, what are you talking about? Since you have made up your mind, of course, it's up to you. Xiao Wanru said helplessly. Somewhere in her heart, she was a little flustered, a little confused, or there were some other feelings. She couldn't tell at the moment. She just wanted to clench her fists subconsciously, but one of her hands was held tightly by Chu Luchen, so she couldn't clench it for a while. After I come to see you this time, it will be convenient for me to see you in the future. It's not convenient for me to come here in the middle of the night. Chu Luchen said as if it was a matter of course. It seemed that he meant that Xiao Wanru always asked him to come here in the middle of the night. Xiao Wanru was ashamed and angry. For a moment, she almost couldn't control herself and wanted to push Chu Luchen away. However, he seemed to know nothing about it and still held Xiao Wanru's hand and sighed. No one asked you to come here in the middle of the night. Xiao Wanru said angrily. Anyway, there was no one else in the room, so she didn't need to be too polite. Zhuozhuo, didn't you make me climb over the wall in the middle of the night? Chu Luchen widened his eyes and said with a smile. Looking at Xiao Wanru in front of him who looked like an irritated little beast, he only felt it was interesting. Since she had entered his door, how could she leave? As a shield, she had to block the arrow first. Your Highness! Xiao Wanru was about to fly into a rage out of shame. She glared at Chu Luchen with her shimmery eyes and unconsciously raised her voice. Okay, it's all my fault. But I'm really hungry now. Give me a bowl of longevity noodles. Chu Luchen stopped while he was ahead, took Xiao Wanru's hand and said, Your Highness, let me get up first. Xiao Wanru reached out to pull his hand, but failed, so she could only say helplessly. Chu Luchen was very obedient this time. As soon as he loosened his hand, Xiao Wanru hurriedly pulled his hand back. She looked at the teeth marks on the back of her hand and glared at him fiercely. His teeth were really good. What he said about dying of illness was all fake. She finally saw through him. He was fine when he came and went at night, and he even said that he was sick and weak. Who was he fooling? She bit her lip angrily and stood up helplessly. She calculated that Yu Jie should have come back at this time. She walked to the door and opened it. As expected, she saw Yujie holding a tray and standing with Chu Lu and Xiao Xuanzi. "Give it to me," Xiao Wenru said. Yujie hurriedly reached out and handed the tray to her. Xiao Wenru took it. After entering the door, she returned to the mat, put the tray in her hand on the table, and said angrily, "Your Highness, you can eat the noodles." There was only one bowl of noodles with chopped green onions sprinkled on it. It was very simple, but it looked delicious. Chapter 5:31. Looking at the only bowl of noodles, Xiao Wenru swallowed her saliva reluctantly. She was also hungry and wanted to eat it. This was her longevity noodles, but the person opposite her also sat up and picked up the chopsticks as if he was about to eat it. She picked up the bowl and looked at Chu Luchan. Seeing that he was waiting to eat the noodles as if it was a matter of course, she felt aggrieved. She took a deep breath and realized that the situation was beyond her control. This person came to snatch her noodles today, so she had to give him some. She pushed the noodles in her hand over. Although she felt aggrieved, she had to show a graceful smile on her face. She couldn't let this temperamental person know that she was unwilling. She was angry in her heart, but she put on a gentle expression. Since she lived with Xiao Yenru, Xiao Wenru felt that she was more and more skilled in showing a gentle expression. "Your Highness, please have some noodles," Chu Luchan said with an "oh," and put the tray on the table. He took it away impatiently, picked up a noodles, and ate it slowly. There was not much noodles in a bowl. After a few bites, there was only a small half of the bowl left, and he could even see the other end. Xiao Wenru looked along the noodles to Chu Liuchen's face. Even if it was not convenient to eat a noodles, he ate it very elegantly. She looked at it eagerly, swallowed again, and asked almost subconsciously, "Your Highness, is it delicious?" "Excellent. Zhuizhua, do you want to try it?" Chu Luchan picked up the noodles with chopsticks, swallowed the noodles in his mouth, and said with a smile. He had never seen this girl be so greedy in the past. At this moment, her unwilling and helpless greedy look was very pleasing to him. She didn't prepare another bowl of noodles for him. She deserved to eat it. "Your Highness, are you going to give it back to me?" Xiao Wenru said in surprise and reached out to pick up another pair of chopsticks beside her. There were actually 2 pairs of chopsticks. "You can eat it." Chu Luchan pointed to the other end of the noodles in the bowl with a smile. Looking at the small number of noodles, she thought that today was her birthday, and she was the biggest, so others should give in to her. Then she looked at the other end of the noodles in Chu Liuchen's chopsticks. He didn't eat it anymore. It should be that he was full and was about to put it down immediately. Yujie had made the longevity noodles for her birthday. She was really unwilling to give up. With a sudden impulse, she picked up the other end of the noodles and sucked the noodles as fast as she could in her life. She estimated that she could suck up at least half of the noodles in the bowl. At that time, she would stop eating and generously give the noodles to Chu Luchan, so as not to let down Yujie's kindness. Thinking of this, she sucked hard with her mouth and then felt that she couldn't suck anymore. She looked up in surprise, only to find that the rest of the noodles were in his mouth. She was only a little distance away from the thin corner of his lips. She was so shocked that she sucked hard and the noodles broke. She subconsciously chewed the noodles hard and tried to swallow the noodles in her mouth. Her small mouth was bulging, and she looked like a little pet eating. She was not as elegant as usual, but more innocent and real. Chu Luchan elegantly ate the noodles in his mouth while looking at Xiao Wenru's face with a smile, and then his eyes fell on her red lips. Her lips were originally the darkest color. Even if she didn't put on anything, she still looked extremely beautiful. Now because of eating noodles, her lips were a little warmer, which made them more attractive. Chu Liuchen's eyes involuntarily became deep. Xiao Wenru almost gobbled up the noodles. When she ate the last bite, she subconsciously looked up at Chu Luchan, only to find that he was looking at her with deep eyes. She was shocked and shy, and her face turned red. She swallowed the last bite too quickly and choked. She covered her chest, turned around and coughed hard. A hand reached out behind her and patted her gently a few times. An elegant and gentle voice came from behind. "Why are you so careless? It's just eating noodles. Why are you in such a hurry?" I'll treat you to noodles next time. Xiao Wanru coughed hard and almost couldn't breathe. It was obvious that he suddenly ate the noodles and leaned so close to her, but he said that she snatched the noodles in a hurry. She was ashamed and annoyed. Her face was red, but she didn't know whether it was because of coughing or shyness. When she finally stopped coughing, a cup appeared in front of her. Xiao Wanru reached out to take it without hesitation and drank a few mouthfuls. Finally, she suppressed the discomfort just now. She raised her watery eyes full of tears because of coughing and looked at Chu Luchen accusingly. She tried to maintain a serious expression and said, "Your Highness, if you want to eat all the noodles, just tell me. Why did you snatch the noodles?" She was obviously very shy, but she still tried to pretend to be dignified and decent. However, her charming watery eyes were almost overflowing with tears, which made people feel sorry for her. She was obviously a child but pretended to be an adult. Chu Luchen felt more and more amused. She looked so aggrieved but she didn't know it. She thought she was very solemn and strict now. The smile lit up every corner of his handsome face, and finally fell into his eyes. He reached out and gently pinched her tender and white face. Okay, I won't snatch the noodles in the future." If he continued to say it, this girl would definitely be ashamed into anger. After that, he took out a gift box from his bosom and pushed it in front of Xiao Wanru. "Take a look and see if you like it. This is my birthday gift for you. I heard that it's made by a famous artist." Made by a famous artist? Xiao Wanru tried not to think about what had happened just now. She reached out to take the box and was a little curious about the so-called made by a famous artist. She also had a set of jewelry made by a famous artist before, and she almost quarreled with Di Fenglan for this. She opened it and saw a set of tourmaline head ornaments and an orchid-shaped hairpin. Different from the very elegant color in the past, the orchid was in full bloom. It was made of yellow tourmaline and light purple. The craftsmanship was exquisite, and the orchid looked very elegant. However, after using these two colors, it became a little more unique. In addition, it was well made and was actually lifelike. The earrings were also in the shape of orchids. The two hanging earrings were two pink orchids, long and thin, with two green leaves. There was a forehead necklace with an orchid the size of a rice bead hanging in it. It was very small but very exquisite. There was a hint of red tourmaline in the jade white, making the whole necklace exquisite. Xiao Wanru had seen a lot of sets of jewelry with orchids as a set, but she had never seen such beautiful orchid jewelry. She was born in early autumn and used to like light and elegant orchids. Although Tang Chenyan was popular in the capital and there were not many people who liked orchids, she liked orchids only. "Thank you, Your Highness." Looking at the gift in her hand with great fondness, Xiao Wanru couldn't help but show a smile. She was also a girl, and she liked this kind of jewelry that was very attractive to her. Even if she couldn't wear it now, she still liked it when she looked at it. "I've sent the gift and I'm here. Now it's time to go back. If anything happens, just ask Qing to come over." Chu Luchen looked at Xiao Wanru's smiling face with satisfaction, stood up, and said leisurely. Then, under Xiao Wanru's surprised eyes, he reached out his slender fingers to wipe Xiao Wanru's little face, and then a piece of chopped green onion appeared on his white fingers. Xiao Wanru's blush, which had just subsided a little, immediately spread all over her little face. She said angrily, "Your Highness, don't hold me back. I really have something to do and have to leave." Chu Luchen pinched his fingers and felt the softness of the bottom of his hand. He raised his handsome eyes and said gently. His words were really like that of an elegant child in the secular world, and he was the kind of child who was untainted by worldly affairs. If he ignored his actions just now, it would be a miracle. "Your Highness, please take care. I won't see you off." Xiao Wanru bit her lip and felt her teeth itching. This evildoer was not as good as his appearance. "You don't have to see me off. I will leave by myself." Chu Luchen waved his hand gently and said. Then, under Xiao Wanru's angry big eyes, he walked slowly to the door, pushed open the half-closed door, and walked out when he saw a few servants standing in front of the door. Xiao Xuanzi hurriedly followed him. When he walked into the yard, Chu Luchen suddenly stopped and turned to look in the direction of the main room. His handsome eyes were gentle and noble, but there was a trace of coldness that could be sensed by others. Xiao Yenru, who was hiding in the window and peeping, hurriedly hid behind the curtain. At that moment, she seemed to feel that his eyes were looking at her like a sharp knife. Although she knew that it was unlikely, she still felt flustered. When she slowly leaned out, she found that Chu Luchen had disappeared in the yard. He should have left. She leaned back behind the curtain again, with jealousy and hatred in her beautiful eyes. She was Prince Chen's childhood sweetheart, but why did Xiao Wenru get Prince Chen's attention? With Prince Chen's cold and amiable character, he should not care about anyone. Why did he reach out to save Xiao Wenru at the gate of the Imperial Palace? Today, he came to the yard and went to Xiao Wenru's place instead of her. She was not convinced just because Xiao Wenru was Ru and Great Elder Princess's granddaughter and Prince Chen's so-called cousin. She rolled her eyes and sat down in front of the table with a sneer. Although Prince Chen was unlikely to inherit the throne, he was unparalleled handsome. Neither Prince Yu nor Prince Zhou could compare with him. She lost because she was not Ru and Great Elder Princess's granddaughter. She was not convinced. In addition to his handsome appearance, Prince Chen actually had other uses. At least he was favored by the Empress Dowager. It was said that even the Emperor obeyed him. If she could make him fall in love with her, there would be many benefits. Although she was unwilling to marry Prince Chen, she was willing to be the cinnabar that would never fade in Prince Chen's heart. Why did Xiao Wenru compete with her? She was the first one who knew Prince Chen and had a friendship with him when they were young. How could she close the distance between them by calling him cousin? Xiao Yenru rolled her eyes and pondered. She had to find an opportunity to get close to Prince Chen. Prince Chen had never liked others to get close to him. She had deliberately pretended to bump into him before, but she failed. Now what could she do to attract his attention? With a flash of light in her eyes, she suddenly thought of something and said to Shuqi, "Let's go and see Pushun Nun." Chapter 5:32. Prince Chen came to the Yue nunnery because the Empress Dowager wants you to paint the Guanyin painting? Xiao Yenru looked at Pushun Nun in surprise. That's right, Pushun Nun said with a kind smile. So he will stay on the mountain for a day or two? Xiao Yenru was surprised. I promised to finish it within 3 days, Pushun Nun answered implicitly. Thank you, Nun. Xiao Yenru had got the information she wanted, so she stood up and said goodbye with a smile. Is First Mrs. Foot better? Pushun Nun looked at Xiao Yenru's foot and asked with concern. It's not a big problem. Thank you for your kindness. Xiao Yenru stood up, bowed and then turned to leave. She didn't walk fast, and her footsteps were slightly different. When she arrived at the door of the silence room, Shuqi hurriedly came over to help her. Looking at Xiao Yenru's back, Pushun Nun's eyes became increasingly gentle. At the gate of the courtyard, Xiao Yenru met Huiqing Nun and learned from her where Chu Luchen lived. He also lived in a fragrant room, which was not far from them. Standing at the gate, she thought for a while, and then turned to go to the fragrant room. The fragrant room was relatively large, with 3 main rooms. In the past, it was the place where noble pilgrims offered incense in the Yue nunnery, but now it became Prince Chen's temporary residence. Xiao Yenru didn't go to visit Chu Luchen directly, but sat down in a pavilion not far from his courtyard to enjoy the flowers. The pavilion was built on a protruding rock. It was neither high nor low, but one could see the situation in the courtyard from it. On the other hand, people in the courtyard could also see Xiao Yenru in the pavilion when they looked up. The main room was facing the pavilion. Standing by the window and looking out, one could also see her. There were a few chrysanthemums outside the pavilion, which were in the bud and looked elegant and beautiful. Xiao Yenru leaned lazily against the pillar of the pavilion. The beauty and the flowers were very eye-catching. No matter who saw this scene from a distance, he couldn't help but stop and look at her. Xiao Yenru had always been confident about her appearance. When Chu Luchen was a child, he was not enlightened. Now that he had grown up, of course, his attitude toward women was different from when he was a child. There were many cousins in the royal family, and there were also many princesses who got married. There were also many cousins. However, when she was young, she had heard from Prince Yu and Prince Zhou that Chu Luchen had never been kind to anyone, let alone recognized any cousin as a relative. But just now, he actually recognized Xiao Wanru as his cousin, which meant that he was enlightened. That's great. She was afraid that Prince Chen would not be enlightened. Since he was enlightened, his attitude towards women was naturally different. Even if he was rude to her before, so what? Prince Chen was not an ordinary prince. He had always been cold to others and said whatever he thought. It was the same in the palace, let alone here. Xiao Yanru was confident that Prince Chen would be as amiable to her as Prince Yu and Prince Zhou after a few more contacts with her. It was windy in the mountain, and the wind was stronger at high places. In autumn, if it were not a sunny day, it would be a little cold. Xiao Yanru stood in the pavilion for a long time and finally saw someone coming out of the yard. Looking from a distance, she saw a man in a fur coat, followed by a group of guards and little eunuchs. It was Chu Luchen who was surrounded by so many people. It seemed that he was going to go out. Xiao Yanru stood up with the help of Shuqi and slowly walked down with difficulty. There were not many steps, but they were winding. In addition, her legs were not very convenient. When she came down, Chu Luchen happened to pass in front of her, but he looked straight ahead, as if he didn't see her. Xiao Yanru took 2 steps forward, bowed respectfully to Chu Luchen's back, and said softly, "Greetings, Your Highness." Chu Luchen stopped, looked her up and down from the corner of his eyes, and asked gently, "What's the matter?" "I didn't know that Your Highness was here. I'm really sorry for disturbing your rest." Xiao Yanru bit her lip, raised her soft and beautiful face, and looked at Chu Luchen with a little shyness. His handsome face was like that of a man in a painting. Even though she had planned to do so, she couldn't help blushing when she saw him. She wrapped her handkerchief around her fingers, looking like a young girl who had just experienced her first awakening of love. When she met the man she liked, she didn't know what to say for a moment. She was already an outstanding beauty at her tender and moving age. When she was in full bloom like a flower, every frown and smile of hers had a feminine air of delicateness and delicateness. In addition, she had been blown a little hard by the wind in the pavilion just now. Her black hair was slightly messy, with 1 or 2 strands falling beside her ears. However, it made people feel that she was as beautiful as jade, delicate and adorable. Her face was pale and her lips were pale. Everything about her spoke of her frailty. Who in the world could ignore such a beautiful and pitiful girl? Even Prince Chen, who was not interested in women, didn't care. "It doesn't matter." Chu Luchen seemed not to see it and was about to leave with a faint cry. "Your Highness," Xiao Yanru said in a sweet voice. She walked up to Chu Luchen in a few steps and handed a chrysanthemum in her hand to Chu Luchen with a blush. "Your Highness, this is the chrysanthemum I picked just now. It's very beautiful. Please take it as an apology from me. Your Highness, please forgive me for disturbing you." Chu Luchen frowned and took the blooming chrysanthemum. Xiao Yanru was overjoyed. She looked at Chu Luchen excitedly with her beautiful eyes and said in a soft voice, "Your Highness." The chrysanthemum was thrown casually on the ground. Chu Luchen stepped on it and crushed it into mud. Chu Luchen's eyes were still gentle, almost as gentle as jade. He smiled slightly, turned around and left in a hurry with his people, leaving Xiao Yanru trembling in the wind. If it weren't for Shuqi who had been supporting her, she would have almost fainted. Miss. Looking at Xiao Yanru, whose face was as pale as snow, Shuqi also panicked and hurriedly said in a low voice. Looking at Chu Luchen, who was walking forward, her heart palpitated. Just now, she clearly saw that although the smile on Prince Chen's face was gentle, the corners of his mouth were slightly raised. That kind of gentle smile was more like a sharp sword, mercilessly cutting through the ambiguous love created by her miss. This Prince Chen was really different from Prince Yu and Prince Zhou. What was more direct than ignoring was trampling on her mercilessly. "Let's go." Xiao Yanru's face turned blue, then turned green, and then turned red with anger. Since she went down the mountain more than 2 years ago, she had been the object of everyone's pursuit. Whether it was Prince Yu or Prince Zhou, they had promised her that they were willing to marry her. But before the situation was clear, she was unwilling to give them any accurate answer. But in any case, they both flattered her. If they had anything good, they would secretly send it to her to please her. Prince Chen was indeed an insensitive blockhead. However, before he reached the gate of his courtyard, he was stopped by someone. This time, it was Qiuyu. Miss Xiao. Qiuyu walked up to her with a smile on his face. He had asked someone to keep an eye on Xiao Yenru. Knowing that she had gone out, he asked someone to guard her at the door. Although they had been guarding for a long time. A little, but it was better than nothing. He hadn't seen the first Miss Xiao in the past few days, so he missed her very much. Shuqi took a step forward and stood in front of Xiao Yenru. As Xiao Yenru's personal maid, she certainly knew that Xiao Yenru didn't like Qiuyu in front of her, so she naturally pretended to be a well-behaved maid to protect her master. Your Excellency, I'm sorry, Shuqi said with a serious face. I'm sorry indeed. I just want to ask, how is the first Mrs. Injury? Qiuyu rubbed his hands and said with a red face. The person he liked was right in front of him, but she was blocked by a maid. But even so, he still liked her, which showed that the first Miss Xiao was a well-behaved Mississippi. It was impossible for her to be the culprit behind the incident that day. Thinking that such a dignified and decent miss was misunderstood, he felt more and more sorry for her. He had explained to the people who saw her that day that it was impossible for the first Miss Xiao to come out at night because she had hurt her foot. But some people believed it while others didn't. Thinking of this, he felt more and more sorry for Xiao Yenru. My master is very well. Please don't disturb her, Your Excellency. If it is spread out, it will ruin her reputation. Shuqi was a little taller than Xiao Yenru, because Xiao Yenru needed her height on some special occasions. With her height and sturdier body than ordinary maids, Xiao Yenru almost hid most of her body behind her. I'm sorry. First miss, please go back and have a good rest. Qiuyu retreated to the side and said in a low voice, but his eyes were still searching for Xiao Yenru. How could there be such a beautiful and virtuous miss? Seeing that she hid behind the maid politely, he knew that she was really a good girl who didn't bully others. But in this way, he couldn't see her. For a moment, he was lost, only thinking that it would be good if she could steal a glance at him. Seeing Xiao Yenru walk past him without looking sideways, he felt inexplicably sad in his heart. It would be good if the first Miss Xiao could just steal a glance at him, but the first Miss Xiao was so well-behaved that she didn't even look at him. After the beauty went far away, he reluctantly withdrew his gaze, looked dispirited, kicked a small stone under his feet, and felt sad. After standing for a while, he looked up at the back of the first Miss Xiao who had gone far away and sighed softly. He really liked the first Miss Xiao. If there was a chance next time, he must ask her if he could go to Duke Xing's mansion to propose marriage. Even though his identity was not good enough for her, he would always be good to her and never let her down. However, he didn't know whether he could see her next time, or whether he could say a word to her even if he could see her. Qiuyu was not sure. He turned around helplessly and walked back listlessly with his head down. Unexpectedly, there was a person standing behind him. When he turned around and lowered his head, he bumped into the person behind him. The person behind him reacted quickly. She reached out to grab his arm, took a step back, and reminded him, "Qiuyu, what are you thinking about? Be careful." Chapter 5:33. Yuanqing, you have to help me. Qiuyu grabbed Wen Shiqi's hand and called his name excitedly. The Qiu family and the Wen family were both aristocratic families. Qiuyu's father had a good relationship with the prime minister, and the Qiu family was also a noble family. However, he was the youngest legitimate son of the family, so he was a little more arrogant than his elder brother who was about to inherit the title. His father was now the assistant minister of the Ministry of Justice, who was also very capable among the noble families. Wen Shiqi and Qiuyu grew up together and had been friends since they were young. Of course, he was excited to see Wen Shiqi at this moment. Wen Shiqi had been known as a genius since he was a child. He was extremely smart and could definitely help him solve the current situation. What's the matter? Wen Shiqi let go of Qiuyu's hand, stepped back in disgust, and then turned to leave slowly. I heard that you were here, so I came to look for you after coming up the mountain. When Shichi came up the mountain today, he now worked in the Ministry of Justice. Since such a big thing had happened in the Ministry of Justice, all the people who could be transferred here had been transferred here. They took turns to be on duty every few days. Today it was when Shichi's turn to go up the mountain. He didn't know about the situation. When he looked for Chiou, he knew that he was coming here, so he came here. He didn't expect to see Chiou and the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion. Wen's mansion and Duke Xing's mansion lived next to each other. When the children of the two families were young, they occasionally played together, so they were naturally more familiar with each other than ordinary families. However, when they grew up, it was not convenient for them to meet each other, so they gradually drifted apart. Yuan Qing, please help me. I like the first miss of Duke Xing's mansion. I wonder if it's possible. Chiou was a little embarrassed about his good friend, but he still said in a low voice. Impossible. When Shichi interrupted Chiou without hesitation and glanced sideways at him. There were some things that he couldn't say clearly, otherwise he would be suspected of ruining Chiou's reputation. When he was young, he could tell that the first Miss Xiao was scheming. At that time, his younger sister was still alive. Xiao Yinru seemed to like to play with his younger sister very much, but she was indifferent to his younger sister. Whenever Xiao Yinru did something wrong, she would always take the blame for his younger sister, and then she would gently comfort her younger sister behind others. However, her silly sister didn't understand. She was deceived by Xiao Yinru, but she still chased after Xiao Yinru happily. Even though she had been wronged and knew that it was Xiao Yinru who did it, she immediately wiped away her tears and followed Xiao Yinru happily just because Xiao Yinru said something nice to her in private. Why is it impossible? My father is Count Liang and the Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Justice. Even though I am the youngest son and cannot inherit the title, I am still not someone ordinary people can compare to. Without Xiao Yinru by his side, Chiou became quick-witted, patted his chest, and said complacently. It was not that he was arrogant. There were indeed many people who wanted to marry him. It was just that he had no intention of getting married before and had been looking for excuses to refuse. Can your father rule over the world? When Shichi said coldly, "Who?" Chiou was startled and his face turned slightly pale. How could he say such words? He looked around and breathed a sigh of relief when he found that there were no outsiders. He didn't understand why when Shichi, who had always been cautious, would say such words. Yuan Qing, don't talk nonsense. Chiou lowered his voice and said, Prince Yu, Prince Zhou, and even Prince Xan all like the first Miss Xiao. How can you win her favor? Each of the three of them is a descendant of the emperor, and they will even have a higher status in the future. If you don't rule over the world, how can you compare with them? When Shichi said with a smile. It seemed that his friend was not so stupid that he knew fear. Chiou gasped and said, You mean that the three masters all like the first Miss Xiao? It should be. Even the three masters can't choose well. Who do you think you are? When Shichi attacked him mercilessly with an indifferent smile on his handsome and elegant face. I'm really nothing. Chiou drooped his head. If it were someone else, he would dare to compete with him, but he couldn't compare with these three masters. Just because one of them would soar to the sky and be high and mighty in the future, he was in a completely different position from them. Thinking of this, he suddenly thought of another thing, and his eyes immediately widened. Prince Qin is on the mountain. Does he also come for the first Miss Xiao? Feeling nervous, Chiou stuttered. When Shichi squinted at him lightly and said, You treat her as a treasure. Prince Qin is not that kind of person. When Shichi had seen Prince Qin before. Even as a man, his appearance was amazing. But even so, he could only sigh that Prince Qin's life was destined to be a tragedy. However, this matter had nothing to do with him. Prince Qin didn't like to appear in front of the public. He had only seen him a few times from a distance. The two of them didn't have any contact, but this didn't prevent him from hearing rumors about Prince Qin. He knew that Prince Qin looked gentle on the surface, but in fact, he was very cruel and had no tender feelings for the fairer sex. In Prince Qin's eyes, beauties were probably just pink skeletons. Moreover, he was so handsome that no one in the world could match his appearance. In fact, the so-called first beauty was not good enough in front of him. A slender figure inexplicably flashed through his mind. Even though that girl was a little young, her appearance was exquisite and beautiful. Even though she was still young at that time, after 2 years, she had already grown up. She should be a stunning young lady. He reached out to rub his eyebrows and inexplicably thought of those dreams. Those messy dreams hadn't disturbed him for a long time, but when he thought of them at this time, he thought of them again. In the dream, he seemed to be very close to her. However, dreams were dreams after all, and they were not real. It was just that when he met her at that time, he thought too much about it and had a dream at night. Later, after she went up the mountain, the dream gradually decreased. Do the first Miss Xiao and the fifth Miss Xiao both live there? He put down his hand, looked at Qiuyu, who was quite shocked, and asked with a faint look in his eyes. Qiuyu thought that he was asking about the situation on the mountain, so he immediately said weakly, "Yes, this courtyard was originally used by the first Miss Xiao when she learned painting from Pushun Nun on the mountain. Later, the fifth Miss Xiao went up the mountain and saw that her courtyard was empty, so she occupied it. Now the first Miss Xiao also lives on the mountain, and the fifth Miss Xiao doesn't intend to give it up. Now the two sisters are squeezed in this courtyard, but the fifth Miss Xiao's courtyard is empty." He didn't like Xiao Wenru from the bottom of his heart. He always felt that there was something fishy about what happened that night, and it was very likely that it was the fifth Miss Xiao who made it. It was obviously the fifth Miss Xiao and Qi Tianyu who caused it, but later everyone suspected the first Miss Xiao. For this reason, Qiuyu felt that Xiao Wenru was very annoying, so he was not kind to her in his words. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" When Shichi knew Qiuyu very well. As soon as he heard Qiuyu's tone, he knew that something had happened, so he said with a calm smile, "Yes, something happened. Come and judge." Qiuyu had to hide it from others for the sake of Xiao Yenru's reputation, but when Shichi was different. When Shichi was his good buddy who grew up with him. Moreover, he admired his buddy the most. When he was young, when Shichi had helped him deal with the aftermath many times, so Qiuyu trusted when Shichi very much. He told the cause and effect of what had happened that night and what he asked Qi Tianyu later. Then he said angrily, Qi Tianyu clearly said that the woman was not the first Miss Xiao, but he was unwilling to explain it to others. I don't know what he wanted to do. Could it be that he rebelled at the sight of Xiao Yenru and wanted to ruin the first Miss Xiao's reputation so that he could marry her? When Shichi fell silent for a moment and rolled his eyes. He had figured out the general details. At that time, Qin Huaiyong seemed to want to marry him, so he specially investigated Xiao Wenru's affairs. Although he was not sure about the matter in Jiangzhou, he had a general idea. Did Qi Tianyu have an affair with Xiao Wenru? That was absolutely impossible. However, he did not expect that the two of them would fight to the death in private. He frowned and felt inexplicably displeased with Qi Tianyu. At that time, Qi Tianyu was already an adult man who was going to get married, while Xiao Wenru was still a child who knew nothing. However, judging from her appearance when she came to the capital city, he could tell that she didn't know anything about the relationship between a man and a woman at that time. It was obvious that the eldest daughter of General Qin disobeyed the rules of unmarried girls and had an affair with Di Yan, so she abandoned him. In this matter, Qi Tianyu was a victim, so was Xiao Wenru. Qi Tianyu didn't vent his anger on the first miss of Qin's mansion, but on the ignorant Xiao Wenru. Moreover, he said that he would fight to the death, which was really contemptible. As a man, how could he have the nerve to bully a little girl? Don't believe Qi Tianyu's words too much. If you let him say that, you will make him bear the reputation of having an affair with a woman. No matter who the woman is, it will be bad for his reputation. He hasn't married for so many years, so he must want to marry a noble girl. If you ruin his plan, he will take revenge on you. When Shichi said lightly, as the top scholar and Qi Tianyu, they must have had a relationship. However, when Shichi could see more clearly than others, so he naturally wouldn't be confused by Qi Tianyu's appearance. He does have a bad character in private. No matter who the woman is, he has an affair with her. How dare he dream of marrying a noble girl? Qiuyu spat. Compared with Qi Tianyu, he certainly trusted Wen Shichi more. Just be careful. Don't meddle in other people's business. Find the files of the investigation in the past few days and give them to me. I want to have a look. When Shichi said casually, this kind of thing was indeed someone else's business, and it had nothing to do with him. If it weren't for the fact that he had dealt with Xiao Wanru before, he wouldn't even ask about it. The two of them turned back while talking. Chapter 5:34. Is your fifth miss here? Xiao Xuanzi came out from behind Chu Luchen and asked with a smile. My fifth miss is here. Qing looked at Xiao Xuanzi and then at Chu Luchen, who looked gentle but cold, and then hurriedly turned back to report. Because she left in a hurry, she bumped into Xiao Yenru, who came over in a hurry and almost knocked Xiao Yenru down. Qing hurriedly grabbed Xiao Yenru's hand and said anxiously, First miss, I'm sorry. I went to report to my fifth miss and left in a hurry. After saying that, she let go of Xiao Yenru's hand and ran inside quickly. Xiao Yenru was so angry that her face turned pale. If it weren't for Chu Luchen standing in front of her, she would have asked someone to drag Qing away and beat her to death. What was the point of having an unruly little maid? Xiao Yenru took 2 steps forward, bowed slightly to Chu Luchen, and said in a sweet voice, Your Highness, I'm sorry. This is my fifth sister's maid. She is as straightforward as my fifth sister. Chu Luchen didn't even look at her and walked into the yard. Xiao Xuanzi squeezed to Xiao Yenru's side and said politely to her, First miss, you're too polite. My master has something to discuss with the fifth miss, so I won't bother you. After saying that, he cupped his hands to Xiao Yenru and hurriedly followed Chu Luchen. Several guards stood in the yard and looked around vigilantly, including Xiao Yenru. She put her hand on the sharp sword at her waist. Even if she only put her hand on the hilt of the sword, she still looked a little flustered and frightened. Xiao Yenru was not only shy, but also held Shuqi's hand tightly and pinched it hard. She didn't come for her, but for Xiao Wanru again. Shuqi's face turned pale because of the pain, but she didn't dare to make a sound. She just begged in a low voice, First miss, let's go back and have a rest first. Your foot hasn't recovered yet, so you shouldn't walk too much. Xiao Yenru turned around gently, slowly relaxed her hands, and helped Shuqi into her main room in a delicate and timid manner. After entering the room, she raised her hand and gave Shuqi a slap, which made Shuqi take 2 steps back and almost fall down. She reached out to cover her face with her red eyes, but she did not dare to shed tears and just looked at Xiao Yenru timidly. After slapping her, Xiao Yenru ignored her and sat down on the chair by the window. From this position, she could see Chu Luchen clearly when he came out. Why did he look for Xiao Wanru again and again? Seeing that her master had calmed down, Shuqi hurriedly let go of her hand covering her face, went to pour a glass of water for her, and then stood behind Xiao Yenru obediently. Even though her hands and face hurt, she did not dare to make a sound or reach out to rub her face in front of Xiao Yenru. Hitting or pinching someone wouldn't kill them, but rubbing them could. Your Highness, why are you here again? Xiao Wanru looked at Chu Luchen, who had returned, in astonishment. What's wrong? Don't you welcome me? Chu Luchen squinted at her, sat down on the mat, picked up the teacup on the table and drank it up. Seeing Chu Luchen put down the teacup, Xiao Wanru blushed. It was obvious that she had drunk half of the teacup just now. I forgot to give you Imperial grandmother's gift. Chu Luchen took out another jewelry box from his bosom and said, Imperial grandmother said that when you go down the mountain, you can go to the Imperial palace to accompany her when you are free. The token she gave you before is still useful. What does Empress Dowager mean? Xiao Wanru asked suspiciously. Nothing special. It's just Imperial grandmother's gift. Chu Luchen stood up and said as he walked out. Because he came and left suddenly and was still talking, Xiao Wanru had to send him out. Chu Luchen didn't stop walking, waved his hand to Xiao Wanru in the yard, and said very dismissively, You can go back. I've already delivered Imperial grandmother's message, and I've also sent the gift. Yes, thank you, Empress Dowager. Thank you, Your Highness. Xiao Wanru stopped and looked puzzled. She watched Chu Luchen leave in a daze, and then turned back to the silence room with a slight frown. As she looked around, she had already seen Xiao Yenru in front of the window of the main room. Chu Luchen came inexplicably and said something inexplicable. He should have said it in the room, but he said it in the yard. If he didn't say it to her, he must have said it to Xiao Yenru. Xiao Yenru's heart skipped a beat. Yujie, put away Empress Dowager's gift. She ordered Yujie beside her softly. Her voice was not loud, but it could be heard far in the empty yard. Xiao Yenru, who was in front of the window, heard it clearly. Empress Dowager actually gave Xiao Wanru a gift, and her face immediately changed. No wonder Prince Chen came back. It turned out to be Empress Dowager's order. Empress Dowager doted on Prince Chen the most, and Prince Chen was most obedient to Empress Dowager. She didn't know what gift Empress Dowager gave Xiao Wanru and why Empress Dowager thought highly of Xiao Wanru. She almost twisted the handkerchief in her hand, and her eyes were full of jealousy. Fortunately, Prince Chen didn't come here willingly, but what did Empress Dowager mean? Was it because of R and Great Elder Princess? Why did a woman picked up halfway should be more favored by Empress Dowager than her? Empress Dowager even gave her a gift and made Prince Chen come here specially? Thinking of this, she felt unwilling. She gritted her teeth and sat in front of the window with a gloomy face. She put down the handkerchief in her hand to pull the fluttering curtain. A wind blew and fluttered the curtain, so she couldn't see Xiao Wanru's expression at this time. Judging from her words, Xiao Wanru must be very proud. What about Empress Dowager? Empress Dowager was old, and the next emperor would be in charge in the future. When she became the mother of the world in the future, even if she was Empress Dowager, so what? She slightly raised the corner of her mouth and showed a cold smile. She reached out to pull the curtain, and the corner of her eyes fell on a silver hook hanging on the curtain. Suddenly, she thought of something, and her smile became more and more funny. She had done it a little foolishly before. How could she let others do it when she was the one who did it? Her grandmother had not finished the trap she had set before. She borrowed an opportunity from Pushun Nun and didn't kill Xiao Wanru. Then she would let her grandmother continue. She just needed to keep an eye on it. Even if there was a fire, it wouldn't burn her. Her grandmother's matter had nothing to do with her. That afternoon, Xiao Yenru sent 3 letters, which were sent by Huiqing Nun. One was to old Madam of Duke Xing's mansion, and the other 2 were sent to her personal maid Moyan. She knew who to send them to. At the same time, Chu Luchen also received a letter of information. After reading the sealed information in his hand, Chu Luchen put down the letter with a gentle face. He picked up the tea at hand and took a sip, with a smile in his eyes. "Master, what do you think we should do?" Seeing that his master was in a good mood, Xiao Xuanzi came up and asked in a low voice. "Nothing. Just let him go. Let's play it by ear and see when he plans to make this matter known. The posthumous child's trick is really good. Everyone wants to get involved in it." Chu Luchen said casually. "Master, will they come to you?" Xiao Xuanzi asked worriedly. "I'm not in good health. If it weren't for Imperial grandmother's order, I wouldn't have forced myself to come up the mountain." Chu Luchen leaned against the couch and lazily flipped through the information in his hand. "Let them do something. Since they have come out, they have to do something." "Who do you want to do?" Xiao Xuanzi asked and immediately knew the answer. "The relevant officials? Don't kill the most relevant one. Just kill the one who has just surrendered." Chu Liuchen's eyes showed a bit of coldness. "Assassinate in the street?" Xiao Xuanzi asked. "Don't do it on the street. Let's use the incident of kidnapping a girl and killing her as a prelude. Is the censorate empty recently? I heard that all eyes are on the Yuhui nunnery, but they can't find anything. My uncle is also unwilling to investigate it too clearly. He intends to delay it as long as possible and leave it unsettled in the end." Chu Luchen ordered with a trace of sarcasm on his face. When someone couldn't sit still anymore, he would expose himself. That would be the best, so that he wouldn't have to do anything. "Yes, I understand. Is it bad for the 5th miss that your highness came back today?" After talking about the business, Xiao Xuanzi thought of his master's behavior before. If his master had anything to send, he would have sent it at that time. There was no need for him to make a trip later, especially when he just went in and then left. Don't they always suspect that there is something between me and Zhuozhuo? Now it's the right time to let them see it clearly. Chu Luchen said lazily. Master, do you mean that you want to make the engagement official? Xiao Xuanzi asked uncertainly. It doesn't matter whether it's official or not. You just need to express Imperial grandmother's intention. My intention doesn't matter. Chu Luchen said indifferently. Master, to the fifth miss. Xiao Xuanzi frowned. He clearly felt that his master treated the fifth miss differently, but why did his master mean the same thing? I don't care about Zhuozhuo's intention. That's what they want to see. Just let them see it. Chu Luchen squinted at Xiao Xuanzi, reached out to pat his head, and waved his hand. Go and do your work. Xiao Xuanzi was stunned at first, and then suddenly understood. He was immediately overjoyed and nodded repeatedly. Master, I'm going to do my work right now. It turned out that this was what his master wanted others to see. Since others didn't want him to care about the fifth miss, he naturally couldn't care about her, so as not to cause trouble for the fifth Mississippi. From this point of view, his master really treated the fifth miss differently. Xiao Xuanzi felt that he had to treat the fifth miss more like a mistress in the future. His master's health was getting better and better. In the future, he would marry a wife and have children. Prince Chen's mansion would only become more and more lively. No one would say that his master was a short-lived ghost. Thinking of this, Xiao Xuanzi's eyes turned red, but he didn't slow down and ran out in high spirits. The days were getting more and more promising, and they were no longer lifeless. In the next few days, the officials of the Ministry of Justice almost turned over the entire Yuhui nunnery, but they still found nothing. In the end, after the emperor flew into a rage and scolded several ministers, another thing happened, which was related to an official of the Ministry of Justice. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.